Story 1.
I opened my marriage, ended up cheating, and my husband proved he's the alpha by destroying me in court. Forever lasted for years, months, and days. My peaceful and predictable life started falling apart 2 weeks ago. I'm Mark, and Carly has been my wife for 3.5 years. We met at a career event during my master's degree, where she praised the company she worked for. Although my degree and her job didn't align, we clicked. After a few ordinary dates, things took off. She was 6 months out of an engagement, and I had been casually dating for the past 2 years. We spent most of our free time together. While she had a salaried position, I was knee-deep in my thesis. We were both cautious about closeness, but once it started, we knew we belonged together. We got married after my graduation, vowing our love would last forever. I found a job close enough for Carly to keep hers, working in network solutions in northern Indiana. As a project manager, I oversee a team of 12, and occasionally travel for client setups with a group of colleagues. I don't decide who travels. A group of project managers and my boss, Dennis, make those decisions. We aim to give everyone on-site experience. This time, I had 2 men and 3 women on my team, all older than me. Dealing with a challenging client, their experience was an asset. The first angry encounter didn't take long. We arrived at 8 a.m., had an introductory meeting, and began implementing our solution mid-morning. Their supposed expert lost his temper with Leanne, one of my qualified team members. I helped diffuse the situation with their site manager. Leanne was shaken, so I gave her time to recover in the coffee room. Unfortunately, the scene repeated itself after lunch. Their expert was sent home, and despite efforts to calm Leanne, I eventually sent her back to the hotel. She joined the team for dinner, and I invited them to join me for a run around the park. Leanne was the only one who accepted. While jogging, she suggested running away together, but I reminded her of company policies regarding relationships between managers and subordinates. Back in my room, I was perplexed by the conversation. I talked with Carly but didn't mention Leanne's actions. Leanne, always displeased with me being her superior, showed signs of disrespect. The next morning, I asked Leanne if everything was okay. "Currently, I'm fine, Mark," she replied. Thankfully, the day was uneventful. Their expert doubted our work but didn't lose his temper. My team and I had dinner, and during the evening, a disruptive guest caused a scene. After dinner, I jogged alone, talked with Carly, and watched the 10 p.m. news. A knock on my door revealed Leanne with her coat on. I greeted Leanne and inquired about her well-being. Noticing a change in her tone, she mentioned wanting to show me something and proceeded to reveal her body. I advised Leanne to cover up and declined her offer, suggesting she return to her room with plans. To see her in the morning, she responded with a mock-sad look and a smile before leaving. Recognizing the importance of informing Dennis, I sent an email seeking a private conversation about Leanne. The next morning, I approached Leanne and asked if everything was okay. She assured me that she was currently fine. While she demonstrated skill in her job, her behavior struck me as strangely odd. Dennis responded to my email later, expressing his intention to meet with me upon my return. Everything seemed normal for the rest of the trip back home. Leanne was as abrupt as usual. I hoped whatever caused those 2 strange nights was in the past. Foolishly, I received a text from Leanne on Sunday evening describing explicit content and emoticons. I hadn't seen Leanne since our plane landed on Friday evening. She likely sent the text meant for her lover to me by mistake. I didn't respond and planned to talk with her in the morning. The idea of Leanne with a lover was hard to imagine. Just saying. However, the same could easily be said about me. I mentioned to Leanne that I thought she had mistakenly sent me a text the previous night. She replied, "Mark, I didn't send anyone a text message last night." I chose not to press the issue. She was deeply involved in debugging a problem, and I had a busy day myself. On Tuesday night, Leanne sent a message which included a selfie. She expressed, "Could the closeness with you get any better? I don't think so," with more lovebird emoticons. I emailed Dennis again, reminding him of my request for a private conversation. He apologized for the delay but postponed it until next Monday. Leanne called in sick on Wednesday. As Dennis was out of town, I had to wait a day to confront her. My day was quite ordinary. Unexpectedly, someone called my name as I was getting into my car. Whatever hit me knocked me out, and I woke up in the hospital. The police updated me on Terry, Leanne's husband, who thought I was having an affair with her. He had violently attacked me, causing a concussion, 2 broken ribs, a hernia, and a broken hand. Terry left copies of Leanne's texts and pictures, colored to hide explicit content, next to my unconscious body. Unfortunately, he gave the same copies to Carly. Carly answered the first call, expressing her wish for my painful demise. I stayed in the hospital overnight for observation, and Carly refused to answer her phone. On Thursday, I took a cab home, and Carly wouldn't talk to me. Rather than starving, I ordered pizza. On Friday, despite the pain, I went to the office. In the afternoon, I learned I was on paid leave due to Terry's complaint. My hearing would be on Monday when Dennis returned. When I got home, Carly was dressed provocatively. I questioned Carly about her attire, expressing surprise at her early return and noting the note she left. She replied that she had a date. I warned her not to proceed, emphasizing the irreversible consequences. She responded, suggesting that I was being hypocritical, claiming innocence in the accusations her jealous husband made. According to her, he mistook her for someone else, and she hadn't done anything to jeopardize our marriage. She challenged me to produce proof, denying any response to the alleged texts and pictures. She asserted her complete innocence, expressing disbelief. She mentioned that she might or might not be back that night, advising me not to wait up for her. I reiterated my warning, but she dismissed it, setting in motion the end of our marriage. She revealed her intention to go on a date with someone from work as revenge for what she believed I had done. Her note echoed these sentiments, portraying me as worthless and indicating her intention to have some fun. After our argument, I tried to get comfortable but couldn't. I left a note for Carly explaining that something was really wrong, and I headed to the ER. It was 6 p.m. on Friday. Tests at the hospital revealed a ruptured spleen, and my brother was listed as my emergency contact. They operated, stitched the spleen, and then stitched me back together. I woke up to the beeping and humming sounds, drifting in and out of awareness until I found myself in a sun-filled room. Following their recommended diet, I sat contemplating my situation. My confusion was interrupted by my cell phone buzzing. Although the number was unfamiliar, I answered it. The caller accused me of being foolish, stating that I had been with her again last night. I defended myself, saying that Terry had the wrong person as I had been in the hospital since 6 p.m. the previous night. Silence followed. I reiterated that I went to the gym at 8 p.m. and was only gone for an hour. Terry mentioned a text from her that morning talking about the great closeness we had. I clarified that I had been on the operating table and was still at University Hospital in room 612. I assured Terry that I was not going anywhere that day and needed to get to the bottom of this. I promised to see her in a bit. I checked my messages and found a text from Leanne claiming that the closeness last night was so good. The floor nurse dropped by to check her vitals and change her drip. Overwhelmed, I felt like asking her for something to end this nightmare. She left, saying she'd be back to change my dressings. As soon as the nurse left, Carly entered my room, still dressed provocatively, and asked if I was okay. I assured Carly that I was fine and asked her to leave, expressing my desire for her not to be around. She pleaded, explaining that she was worried about me and had come right away when she read my note. In response, I stated that her staying out all night meant she ended our marriage, and I insisted she leave. My voice rose, prompting the floor nurse to inquire if everything was okay. I requested her assistance to escort Carly out, and security had to step in. I attempted to make sense of Leanne's actions, considering the possibility of revenge. I wondered. If it was due to my rejection of her or being her boss, it had to be one of those reasons. I speculated that she might have mistaken my phone number for someone else's, as nothing else made sense. Carly called my cell, expressing that our marriage was over and she wanted me to leave her alone. I responded, disagreeing with her, claiming she messed around and now acted self-righteous. She argued that I was wrong, asserting her innocence and stating that we were done. I hung up and she sent a text message saying, "We need to talk." I refused, stating, "No, we don't. Move your stuff out or set my stuff by the door." She questioned our connection, saying, "I thought we were soulmates. Is that what you thought when you were having your revenge?" I retorted, "Is that what you thought when you were with your lover?" I didn't need this. Frustrated, I turned off my cell phone and requested morphine. Just before lunch, the nurse returned to change my dressings, starting with my face. Terry and Leanne knocked and asked if they could come in. Leanne reacted, exclaiming, "Oh my God, Mark, what happened to you?" "Hi, Leanne. This must be your husband, Terry, isn't it? What happened to your lip?" she asked, diverting her eyes. I explained. "I ran into a door. It happened in the employee parking lot. I don't know the status of the investigation at this point. Last night, they discovered I had a ruptured spleen. Nothing serious, just a few stitches fixed the problem. I knew Terry was the one who caused my injuries, and so did the police. Evidently, Terry hadn't informed Leanne about his encounter with the police." The nurse finished with my face and asked if I wanted my company to leave while she did the spleen surgery dressings. I replied, "No, let them stay." The nurse needed something, so she left, saying she would return shortly. Leanne took a seat on the chair, and Terry attempted to start a conversation. I gestured for Terry to come closer and quietly mentioned my concerns about Leanne's peculiar behavior on the last road trip, asking if she had been under pressure recently. Terry shared in a hushed tone that her mother had died in a car crash last Christmas and her sister had just started chemo for breast cancer. He added that she seemed to be dealing with it okay. The nurse returned, prompting Terry to back up against the wall, and the room fell silent. Carly stormed in, yelling at me and Leanne. The nurse called security, and Terry restrained Carly until security arrived. After the peace was restored, the nurse continued her work, and Leanne got up, standing close enough to hold my hand. Leanne expressed, "Last night was awesome. We need to go to that beach again. The closeness with you is so good." Terry, myself, and the attending nurse stared in disbelief. The nurse looked at Terry and mentioned, "Don't let her leave. I'll be right back." Terry wrapped Leanne in a hug, silently conveying, "I'm so sorry." After about 5 minutes, the nurse and a pair of doctors escorted Terry and Leanne from the room. I had all afternoon to replay the entire 2 weeks, realizing there were two very different Leanne personalities. Several hours later, Terry returned, expressing his apologies. He inquired about Leanne's odd behavior, and when I mentioned the angry encounter, he lit up. "I'll be right back," he said. He returned with a doctor, and I repeated my story. Terry began explaining, "Mark, when Leanne was a child, she was mentally traumatized quite severely. Her father was relentless in his verbal mistreatment of her. She has been in the midst of a nervous breakdown since last week's encounter. You said she did something strange the day after her work encounter. Was there any conflict involving her that day?" I said no, but then remembered the guest and the tray. The doctor joined in. "That would do it. She has what we call dissociative identity disorder. Basically, she has dual personalities. It is usually a reaction to trauma as a way to help a person avoid bad memories. You must have been the person who interceded on her behalf. You made an imprint on her fantasy personality." Terry asked about Sunday and Tuesday, and I explained about the lawnmower incident and the angry encounter. He inquired about the knockdown fight on the previous night, and I shared that she was upset about the complaint I had filed against him. Terry expressed his regret, understanding the impact on my life. The doctor explained, "Very little can be done. She needs extensive counseling to help her understand what's happened to her. People get over it. It just takes time." Terry apologized again and left. Even though she had turned my life upside down, I really did feel sorry for Leanne. They informed me that I would likely be released by noon on Sunday if I had an uneventful evening. I sent an email to Dennis asking him to please contact Terry, as there had been some pertinent developments. I scrolled through the text messages from Carly, a whole lot of anger being vented towards me. It saddened me to think that this strange set of circumstances had ended my marriage. I played the voicemails, but her attempts to justify her actions only fueled my anger. They all hit the trash can. On Sunday, I drove back to find my house as I had left it. Carly had not moved out, and my stuff was still there. I started packing what I thought I'd need for the next week. Dennis called around 3 p.m. and asked if he could drop by. He said everyone was convinced I was not at fault and had done nothing wrong. My attempt to talk to him about Leanne, along with Terry explaining her medical issue, had satisfied all of higher management's concerns. I was reinstated, and this would be expunged from my employment history. Leanne had been placed on unpaid leave. I just placed the last sack in my car when Carly pulled into the driveway. She accused me of planning to run away, calling me a coward. I explained that Leanne had a nervous breakdown and her. Allegations were untrue. Leanne was under observation at the university, and I suggested talking to Terry for confirmation. Despite my decision to cut my losses and move on, Carly pleaded for me to stay, claiming it was a misunderstanding. Carly insisted that Leanne made up the accusations and apologized, asking me not to leave. I firmly stated that I couldn't spend the next 40 years worried, emphasizing that I wouldn't stay married to a woman who used her personal life as a weapon of revenge. Despite Carly's pleas and apologies, I shook my head, closed my car door, and expressed my determination not to see or hear from her again. Carly continued to beg me not to go, suggesting we could overcome the misunderstanding. I expressed disbelief at her characterization of the situation as a misunderstanding, noting the change in tone in her messages and voicemails. Despite my hopes for an amicable divorce, the judge ordered counseling sessions influenced by Carly's statement that she didn't want a divorce. Reluctantly, I attended the sessions to avoid any damage to my reputation. The first counseling session took a negative turn as the counselor attempted a divide-and-conquer approach. Carly presented her case, and then we swapped chairs. The counselor asked me to share my feelings, and I reiterated that I wouldn't stay married to a woman who used her personal life as a weapon of revenge. Carly's attempts to understand my feelings and salvage the marriage were met with my resolute stance. I repeated that I wouldn't stay married to a woman who used her personal life as a weapon of revenge. Carly's plea for more communication and cooperation fell on deaf ears, and I left the session, brushing away her attempt to stop me. As the counseling sessions continued, I maintained my refusal to cooperate. Carly persisted in discussing our feelings, but I hummed a song to drown out her attempts. Despite the counselor's efforts, the sessions deepened the divide between us. After complying with the court-ordered sessions, my attorney informed me that we needed to appear before the judge. The judge granted the petition for divorce, acknowledging the irreparable nature of the relationship. Carly's persistent pursuit of me continued after the legal resolution, with her waiting for me after work and running into me at the grocery store. I chose not to explain her actions, and her text messages inviting me out on dates were met with my resistance. Eventually, I found a way to slow down her advances. I responded to Carly's offer to go out on a date by informing her that my new wife would prefer her not to communicate with me anymore. I wished her a great life, and surprisingly, that seemed to work for a week. When she insisted that I wasn't married, I clarified that I hadn't said I was, but when I do find a new wife, that's what she will say. I requested her to move on, claiming that I already had. Although her persistence made me anticipate complications in my attempts to find another woman now, as I try to navigate the dating scene, it becomes evident that I'm not particularly skilled at it. Despite my efforts, nobody I've encountered so far lives up to the image I had of Carly. However, I'm not in a rush. An acquaintance from accounting, a divorcee, showed interest, and I sought Dennis's approval before asking her out. After a few dates, she expressed a desire for a friends with benefits relationship. The morning after I spent the night with her for the first time, Carly sent a text. Carly questioned whether I loved this new woman, deeming it none of her business. In response, I curtly stated that my feelings were not her concern and conveyed that I still loved her. I added a brief apology, closing the conversation. Too little, too late. In the back of my mind, I can see you all watching my demise play out on Dateline. Leanne returned to work and was placed under the supervision of another manager. I do my best to avoid her. She has never said or done anything odd again. The police didn't want or need me to cooperate to convict Terry. The security cameras provided everything they needed. I did appear at his sentencing to ask the court for lenience. He was given a suspended sentence, but he still has a felony conviction. I've been married to Kathy for more than 30 years. We met when we were young, and now I'm 59 and she's 55. We have 3 adult children. Our life together has had its good and bad times, but we've always been there for each other. Kathy means the world to me. Kathy has some friends who believe in things like feminism, identity politics, and social justice. It's a bit different from what I think, but that's okay. People have their own ideas about these topics. Kathy and I sometimes talk about these things and try to understand each other's viewpoints. I did not pay much attention to these ideas that Kathy had or was starting to develop. For me, they were all nonsense. Kathy had some strong views about how women were oppressed for a long time, which sometimes scared me. She personally hadn't experienced oppression or discrimination. I found these discussions unsettling, so I often tried to change the subject when they came up. I have seen these woke women on TV shouting and talking nonsense, screaming at people when they didn't have any logical answers. I worried that Kathy was getting influenced by them. One day, she started questioning our marriage, saying it had become dull. I suggested therapy to work on our relationship, but she wanted to go on a solo vacation instead. I reluctantly agreed, but later found out she went with her friends who I thought were toxic. When Kathy returned from her vacation a week later, she looked like a completely different person. She had cut her hair short, and there was an unusual aura about her. It felt like she was someone I had never met before. She didn't hug me or show any affection when she arrived, which was unsettling and made me feel like a stranger to her. Kathy continued to spend more time with her friends and engage in protests, some of which I didn't support. I had a serious conversation with her, expressing my concerns about the direction she was heading. I told her that she needed to reconsider her choices. However, she didn't listen and continued with her activities. Things escalated when she was detained for participating in a protest that disrupted traffic. I had to pick Kathy up from the police station, and during the ride home we had a very heated conversation. She remained silent throughout, which left me even more concerned about what was happening with her. Kathy began using social media, specifically TikTok, to share her feminist ideas. She started gaining a decent following, and it became clear that she was investing a significant amount of time and effort into her videos. She would spend hours getting dressed and creating her content for the platform. Her social media activities seemed to be consuming a lot of her time and energy. One day, I came across a video from Kathy that left me horrified due to its message. In the video, she discussed the desire to avoid becoming a miserable older woman, while emphasizing the common trajectory of raising a family and working hard. She pointed out that many women realize in their 50 or 60 that they have nothing for themselves, leading to resentment. Kathy suggested the need to create individual lives, something exclusive for personal fulfillment. Even in good marriages, she noted, unhappiness could persist. Divorce might not be necessary, but finding what brings fulfillment and a sense of truly living one's life was crucial. Kathy encouraged living each day to the fullest, enjoying good marriages and maintaining individuality apart from spouses and children. She urged women to break free from routine, explore the world, and discover fulfillment and happiness beyond their roles as mothers. I felt that she was encouraging women to get divorced. I went home that evening and confronted her. To my shock, she said that she was leaving and had already packed her bags. I tried to stop her, but she shot back, saying that she was bored with her life and wanted freedom and happiness. She did not want the responsibilities of being a grandma or my wife. She wanted to enjoy her life and explore more outside what she called this prison. I was speechless and felt that I had lost my wife to toxic people who had poisoned her mind. I did not stop her and just said, "I'll miss you. Come back as soon as your exploring is over." She moved into a smaller apartment in the center of the city. I informed my kids about their mother, and they all said that she was just going through a phase and would get back home soon. I agreed and waited for her. My wait was cut short and turned to shock as I received the divorce papers. She had all this planned and was not in any phase. I called Kathy, but she did not answer. My kids, during this time, did try to talk their mother out of divorce, but she shut them down as well. A few weeks later, we had our divorce settled, and after 30 years of marriage, I was single. The following day, Kathy shared a new video expressing that she had accomplished the move to her new place, which she described as feeling like a princess bed. She mentioned the rain during the previous day's move. That day, she woke up with a different feeling, free, as if a weight had been lifted. She felt genuinely excited for the first time in years, although her place was still somewhat disorganized due to unpacking, and the apartment was relatively small, requiring intense organization. She conveyed gratitude for this change. After a couple of weeks of continuous moving, she had finally settled into her new apartment. Kathy mentioned that she would provide a tour of it tomorrow. At that moment, she just wanted to say hello. Additionally, she mentioned that her very handsome boyfriend was making dinner for her, emphasizing that life was good. I was angry and heartbroken. She broke my home and now has broken my heart. My kids also saw the video, called me to console me, and asked me to move on with my life. Eventually, I did move on and found an amazing woman, Maya, who was in her early 40s. She was a high school teacher and was single. We hit it off instantly and have been going steady. I never informed my ex-wife, and I did not think it was important. I planned a trip with my kids and Maya so that everyone could know each other and get along. Maya asked me to invite my ex-wife, Kathy, as she felt it was important for her to know that there was someone in my life. So I called Kathy and invited her. Initially, she did not agree to join our trip. I did not tell her about Maya, but then my daughter later called her and asked her to join, informing her that the invitation would not be extended again. I had hired an amazing boat ride for all of us, and Kathy was the last to join us. She came alone. I introduced her to Maya and told her how happy I am with Maya. I wish I could have clicked a picture of Kathy at that very moment. Her face was red, and it seemed that she was not expecting me to get a life for myself. Throughout the trip, I enjoyed Kathy's disgust toward Maya and me. Although Maya had a noble intention, I was really enjoying the results. A few days later, we came across another video of Kathy where she revealed that the recent days had been highly traumatic for her. Despite acknowledging that it wasn't entirely her fault, she took some blame for the distressing situation. Kathy shared that she anticipated a strong physical and emotional reaction upon discovering that her estranged husband was in a new relationship. Despite being separated for a year, they had still spent some family time together, and he had assured her multiple times that he wasn't involved with someone else. However, this turned out to be untrue. Kathy expressed uncertainty about joining the trip, fearing her ex-husband might misinterpret her intentions. Despite these concerns, her daughter convinced her to participate, suggesting that he might not extend another invitation. In hindsight, Kathy understood the reason for her daughter's advice. She clarified that what hurt her the most wasn't the fact that he was in a new relationship as she had a boyfriend herself, but the fact that he hadn't informed her. She had felt secure, believing he still harbored love for her. He even invited me on a trip with him and our daughters, which I accepted. However, during the trip, I discovered some hurtful texts, and it was horrifying, she admitted. The trauma that followed was intense. I had a physical and emotional breakdown, and I felt like I had completely lost control of my emotions. It was a terrible experience, and I'm struggling to cope with it. Her upset wasn't about losing me, it was more about losing the exclusive access to my resources and the stability I provided. The specific trigger was when she discovered I was telling another woman that I loved her, not just that we were involved romantically. Unlike Kathy's boyfriend, who was only interested in casual relationships and typically didn't invest financially or emotionally in her, when a man like me is in love, he often wants to build a life with the woman he loves. For Kathy, the real trauma was losing her place in my life to another woman. I began receiving numerous calls from Kathy, where she expressed her remorse and reminded me that I had once asked her to come back. In response, I told her that it was too late and that she would no longer be a part of my life. "That boat has sailed," I said. She had made her choice, created her own circumstances, and now needed to live with the consequences of her decisions. A few days later, we came across another video from Kathy where she shared that things weren't going well for her. She reflected on how life used to be good and questioned whether the difficulties were her fault, considering herself possibly selfish or self-centered. Kathy expressed her struggle with the artificiality and pretense around her. She admitted she was fine initially, but now the reality of the separation was sinking in. Acknowledging that it was just a separation and that there were worse things in the world, Kathy remained uncertain about what her future held. She could only remember the positive aspects and found it challenging to recall anything negative. Kathy reminisced about a lovely woman who was once a close friend, revealing that she had been invited to dinner by this person and had bought gifts for their children. Despite being at home with her own family, Kathy decided to join this other family for dinner. She expressed a sense of missing her own family and the struggle of being without them. Kathy confessed that being a family meant a lot to her, and she pondered whether enduring misery would be worthwhile if it meant having her family back. Without them, she felt lost about her identity. Teary-eyed, Kathy clarified that her emotions weren't due to drinking but stemmed from the profound difficulties she was facing. She wished everyone a happy Saturday and expressed hope that she would be okay later, acknowledging the profound sense of loss she felt. Kathy concluded by mentioning her plan to go sit with another family who had invited her, appreciating the gesture but acknowledging that it wasn't an easy situation for her. "My daughter called me, asking me to do something, but I told them, 'Your mother chose this life.' I did try to stop her. She wanted freedom. She has freedom. She has a new love life and can explore the world as she wants. My daughter agreed and said that while she agreed with every word I said, she couldn't help but feel for her mother's bad choices." A few days later, there was another video. "Good morning," Kathy began. "Sometimes I wonder what I'm doing and why I made the choices I did. Last night I had a dream about my estranged husband. He came to me saying he'd hurt his hand badly and was crying. In the dream, he needed my help, and I suggested moving in to take care of him. It felt like we were starting over, the way things used to be. It was an upsetting dream, and it's not even possible. It's just how dreams are, I guess. My body is telling me that I still love him and always will, but things are different now. Sometimes I get angry and think, why doesn't he believe that I should have a fair share? He wants to give me some money, but it's not enough. All the things we have were partly because of me. My parents lent us money, and I played a significant role in helping him, encouraging him, and being there for him even when things went wrong. I made mistakes, and I paid for them, especially when I left. It seems like everything he did was okay, but everything I did was my fault. I'm constantly blamed for everything. So now I'm at this point in my life. He has more money than I do, and I'm struggling to find a decent place to live. Some people, especially men, think that women don't deserve anything, that they're freeloaders and should just fend for themselves. After 30 years of taking care of someone, I feel undervalued, like I have no worth. It's hard. I saw the video and felt that she has now lost her mind. She did receive her share of fortune as part of the divorce settlement. I did everything by the book, and as per the law, she cannot gaslight me and make me look like a villain in this story, nor can she blame me for her bad choices. I wanted to retaliate and sue her for her video, but Maya stopped me and asked me to ignore her. My kids called Kathy and told her to apologize for what she posted, or she would be cut off from everyone's life. Kathy, having no choice, did post a lame apology citing her mental health as the reason. I got married to Maya a few days later, and I unfollowed Kathy on all my social media.
Story 2.
Husband divorced and ghosted his cheating wife after she tried to legitimize her affair. Lisa sat at the kitchen table, having just finished reviewing her upcoming speech. She had gone through it repeatedly, searching for any significant flaw, but found none. In her 3-page notes, she not only outlined all her arguments but also anticipated every counter-argument and had responses ready. Ultimately, she concluded that with the speech, she couldn't lose. Perhaps she might not win, but she certainly couldn't lose. Briefly, she pondered what she had to lose, which brought a smile to her face. However, she realized it was too much to risk. Satisfied with her wording, she shifted her focus to timing. If she presented it to Dave slowly, it might resonate with his logical mind, leading to his agreement. However, that would also give him time to formulate counter-arguments. Having known him for 18 years, she acknowledged that in a battle of logic, he would likely prevail. Thus, the slow approach was out. Her preferred strategy remained shock and awe, hit him hard, hit him fast, and secure his agreement before he could gather his thoughts. Was his agreement critical? Damn right. Without it, nothing would progress. That was the risk-free aspect. Nervously, Lisa stood up and busied herself in the kitchen, trying to distract herself from the inevitable pain she was about to cause her husband. He didn't deserve it, but she felt compelled to do it to get what she deserved. She justified her actions by reminding herself that he had backed her into a corner, leaving her no choice. Therefore, it was his fault. Lisa scanned the kitchen, trying to recall the last time she had been there alone on a weekday. It must have been at least 6 months ago. Before that, she was always the first to arrive home and welcome the kids back from school. What caused the change? It was simple. John Stanhope had been transferred from another office 7 months ago to become her boss. Initially, they maintained a typical boss-employee dynamic for a month. However, things shifted when he asked her to stay late one day and then treated her to dinner as a gesture of gratitude. They discovered they had many shared interests despite him being 8 years younger and single. Their mutual appreciation for the arts, movies, and fashion deepened their connection. Gradually, the compliments on her work and appearance increased, leaving her flattered but also concerned about aging. Their after-hours interactions became regular, progressing from work discussions to casual conversations over coffee or at the office. Within a month, they abandoned all pretense of work and spent evenings together. Within another month, his expressions of loneliness and dislike for dining alone led her to skip family dinners to accompany him to restaurants more frequently. By the 3rd month, their outings extended to movies and shows as well. It also encompassed numerous weekends, when she toured out of town or local attractions. To justify her absence at home, she claimed there was a potential promotion on the horizon, and she aimed to distinguish herself by putting in extra hours. Though she felt a twinge of guilt for this deception, her husband Dave wholeheartedly backed her newfound ambition. Despite knowing it wasn't right for a married woman to act this way, after 17 years of selflessly being a mother, she felt entitled to a few hours for herself each day. When she was with John, she felt valued in a different way. While her husband constantly expressed appreciation, it had become routine over the years. Increasing her workload prompted Dave to step up and manage things at home. However, after finding the kids alone at home multiple times, he voiced concerns about their youngest, aged 13, being unsupervised. Lisa reacted defensively, snapping at him that if he wasn't comfortable, he could reduce his hours. The next day, she woke up to find Dave already ready at work. That evening, she returned home to find him there, helping the kids with homework and cooking dinner. With a slight tremor in her voice, she thanked him for supporting her career. As her weekend work began, Dave once again stepped up, taking on the main responsibility of entertaining the kids. Rather than seeing it as a burden, he appeared to relish it and find renewed purpose in life. The kids enjoyed reconnecting with their dad, and everyone had a great time. Even their 17-year-old son sacrificed some of his time with friends to join his dad and siblings on outings. Until 3 months ago, Lisa's association with John had remained strictly platonic. However, one Saturday, following a pleasant lunch and a flurry of compliments, John proposed booking a hotel room for the afternoon. Initially dismissing it as a jest, Lisa's amusement faded when she realized John wasn't joking. It deeply unsettled her. Hastily, she concocted excuses and laughed it off, but inwardly she cursed John for jeopardizing their friendship with a sexual advance. She knew she would never betray her husband. The following Monday at work was disheartening for Lisa, as John treated her with distant professionalism. By week's end, she found herself longing for his presence. The absence of meaningful interactions, lunches, and compliments, despite her efforts to linger after work each day, weighed heavily on Lisa. She acknowledged that the recognition of her professional and feminine strengths had become crucial to her self-esteem. Though Dave was attentive and complimentary, it lacked the same significance. 2 incidents that week should have signaled obsession to Lisa. Firstly, on Wednesday, she returned home to find dinner only partially prepared, with Dave asking her to finish it while he fetched their eldest from soccer practice. Upon his return, Lisa remained seated where she was, causing dinner to be delayed. This led to their first confrontation. Dave questioned the worth of her work-focused dedication, prompting Lisa to lash out, venting her pent-up frustrations from feeling overlooked by John onto Dave. She had calmed down by bedtime, denying any issues when Dave inquired if they were all right. However, Dave noticed her distracted demeanor and refrained from pursuing intimacy, feeling increasingly rejected by her consistent rebuffs. On Friday afternoon, John approached Lisa and offered an apology. He attributed his behavior to being in close proximity to such an attractive and desirable woman while feeling lonely. Lisa accepted his apology but made it clear she was committed to her marriage and intended to remain faithful to her husband. In response, John inquired if any of her colleagues would be open to helping him alleviate his frustration. This remark triggered a possessive reaction from Lisa, who promptly rejected the idea. Despite this exchange, they parted on amicable terms, with Lisa agreeing to meet him for lunch and a show the following day. The second trigger of obsession occurred when Lisa returned home on Friday evening to find Dave and the kids packing for a camping trip. When she questioned them about it, they explained that they had planned this long weekend getaway a month ago. They looked at her incredulously when she claimed to have no prior knowledge of it. They reminded her that they had discussed it over dinner all week, but she refused to believe them. Lisa insisted on rescheduling for the following weekend, but they refused, citing that this was the last opportunity before winter set in. Consequently, the family left for their trip without her, leaving Lisa feeling upset at home alone. Her only consolation was that their absence provided her with 3 days to reconcile with John. It hit Lisa hard the next day after the show when John announced he was unavailable for Sunday and Monday. Despite trying to reach her family, they were out of reach in an area with no cell service. Lisa remained upset upon their return. She refrained from blaming them for not informing her of their whereabouts, fearing she might have ignored their communication. That night, she declined intimacy with John, citing the need to be fresh for work. Alarm bells rang in her mind when Dave suggested her ambitions were driving a wedge between her and her family. After giving him a piece of her mind, she refocused on planning her week with John. She jolted awake before 3 a.m., realizing the harm that her actions and conversations were causing to her perfect marriage and family. The thought of Dave leaving and leaving her to raise the children alone sent a shiver down her spine. However, the idea of losing her loving and considerate husband was even more distressing. Determined to cool her extramarital friendship, she snuggled closer to Dave, finding comfort in his embrace. Though tempted to initiate intimacy as they used to, she refrained, mindful of his early wake-up. Subconsciously sensing her need for closeness, Dave greeted her with a warm hug when she returned home later that night. Yet under John's influence, Lisa couldn't fully reciprocate the affection. This set the stage for the following month. Within a week, things returned to normal with John, as did her marriage and family. However, it was a new kind of normal. While the four of them laughed, joked, and interacted, Lisa felt detached, unaware of the concerned looks Dave shot her way countless times each night. Eventually, Dave reached his breaking point and pleaded with her to abandon the promotion. He expressed his love for her and confessed his fear about the impact of her increased workload on their family. Unfortunately, he couldn't have chosen a worse day to pour out his feelings. On that very day, John had subtly but firmly stated his desire to maintain their friendship only if she agreed to take it to the next level. Lisa was deeply preoccupied. The thought of losing the ego-boosting compliments from John made her uneasy. As Dave begged and implored, Lisa wrestled with her decision. It was obvious that if she had to choose between John and her husband, Dave would prevail. However, she was desperate to avoid making that choice. She relied on both of them, one for stability and the other for validation of her ego. Even after her husband fell silent, Lisa utilized her considerable intellect to devise a solution without risks. By 2 a.m., she had a plan. The very next night, she explained it to John, emphasizing her steadfast commitment to her husband and her unwillingness to cheat. She outlined her scheme, enticing Dave into a three-way where John would conveniently become the third participant. Since the men had never met, it would appear as if John were chosen randomly. If successful, she would then figure out a way to spend time alone with John later, with Dave's approval, thus avoiding infidelity. However, she cautioned John that convincing Dave would take time and requested his patience. John hesitated briefly, weighing the months he had already invested in pursuing Lisa. Confident that once her self-imposed barrier was breached, she would be his whenever he desired, he agreed, warning her that he wouldn't wait indefinitely. Lisa was grateful for his consent, even allowing him to kiss her properly for the first time. However, she drew the line when he attempted to touch her breast. Angered by her own arousal, she firmly pushed his hand away, reiterating her commitment to fidelity, and they proceeded to dinner. Lisa didn't feel particularly anxious about discussing a certain topic with Dave. Their relationship had always been one of openness and truth, especially about their desires, and they had explored role-playing together numerous times over the years. However, feeling too exhausted to broach the subject that night, Lisa chose to masturbate after Dave had fallen asleep. The next night, the timing still didn't seem right, so she again waited until Dave was asleep before she began to pleasure herself, lost in her fantasies about John. She couldn't suppress a soft moan, her arousal intensifying. Suddenly, her private moment was interrupted by Dave shifting towards her. "This seems a bit unfair, doesn't it?" Dave remarked. "Why, what's unfair about it?" Lisa asked, puzzled. "You lying there, pleasuring yourself after you've been rejecting me for the past few months," Dave pointed out. Lisa was shocked. She hadn't realized it had been that long. Has it really been that long, sweetheart? She asked, disbelief in her voice. Absolutely. Ever since you started chasing that promotion, you've either been too exhausted, too irritable, or simply brushed me off whenever I tried to initiate something, Dave explained. Feeling a twinge of guilt, Lisa saw this as an opportunity to finally talk about the issue that had been on her mind. She took a moment to justify to herself how her infatuation with John was affecting their marriage. Ready to open up, she looked for the right way to start this delicate conversation. However, so wrapped up in her thoughts, she didn't notice when Dave sighed and turned away. Again, she realized that suggesting a three-way after a 4-month dry spell might bruise Dave's ego, implying that he alone no longer satisfied her. No, the safer approach was to reconnect with Dave first. Rolling towards him, she pulled him close, but he started snoring once on his back. Lisa felt too embarrassed to even continue masturbating. She needed to release her pent-up desires before John entered her life. There was nothing wrong with her marriage or sex life. After 2 days of inaction, John seemed a bit miffed with Lisa. The following day, she had to kiss him again to prevent him from criticizing her. This time, he behaved and refrained from making any advances. However, it left her feeling aroused enough to passionately kiss Dave when she returned home, and even caressed his groin while doing so. Dave's eyes lit up, and they didn't wait for the kids to go to bed. As soon as dinner ended, they retreated to the small outdoor shed where Dave had installed their jacuzzi, his solution to maintaining a healthy sex life as their children grew older. Once inside, Dave eagerly initiated intimacy. When Lisa jokingly remarked on his impatience, Dave defended himself, explaining that he didn't want to give her a chance to change her mind. Dave performed as usual, but Lisa only reached climax when she closed her eyes and recalled the sensation of John's bulge pressing against her leg earlier that afternoon. The next morning, a Saturday, Dave woke her up in the way she used to enjoy, his tongue exploring her intimately. While Dave likely assumed she used the pillow to stifle her moans, in reality, even with her eyes shut, Lisa struggled to pretend Dave was John. It was a pleasurable, yet perplexing experience for her. That evening, she felt confident enough to bring up the sensitive topic with her husband. After praising his recent performance, she cautiously broached the subject. Despite their many years together, she admitted that things had started to feel a bit routine, and she had developed a fascination with the idea of a three-way. With Dave's open-mindedness, he immediately proposed they role-play it. This response exceeded Lisa's expectations, so they returned to the jacuzzi. After each encounter, they collapsed on the provided mattress, thoroughly exhausted. In fact, the revived intimacy with Dave nearly persuaded Lisa to abandon her plan. About a week and a half into what she considered Dave's adjustment period, John grew increasingly impatient, and the compliments began to dwindle. Lisa found herself needing to kiss him almost daily just to maintain his interest. Eventually, even that wasn't sufficient, and she sensed John withdrawing once again. 2 days after a lengthy session in their jacuzzi shed, Lisa felt ready to broach a sensitive topic with Dave. She had been building up the courage to discuss their sexual adventures and what she envisioned for their future. However, before she could bring it up, Dave initiated the conversation. "Sweetheart, the past few weeks have been amazing. I found it incredibly arousing to have our guest join us in our intimacy. Have you thought about reciprocating by being intimate with her as well? How do you see this fitting into our role play?" Dave inquired, full of anticipation. Lisa was shocked, realizing there had been a significant misunderstanding between them. "What, you think I want a three-way with another woman?" she responded, confused and surprised. Dave, sounding confused himself, asked, "Isn't that what this has been leading up to?" Lisa understood then that they hadn't clearly communicated their desires, leading to this confusion. "No, Dave. My thoughts were on including another man," Lisa clarified, realizing the moment was ripe for an honest conversation. "Oh," Dave reacted, prompting Lisa to seize the opportunity and express her desires more explicitly. "Listen, honey, I've been really excited these past few weeks. Is there any chance we could make my fantasy a reality with another man?" Lisa proposed, hopeful yet nervous. Dave pondered her suggestion carefully. "Well, Lisa, honestly, I don't see that ending well for us. I thought we both liked the idea of including another woman. The thought of another man doesn't sit well with me," he admitted, his discomfort evident. "What if it's something I feel strongly about, Dave?" Lisa pressed, seeking his openness to her perspective. Dave considered her words. "I'd need time to think about it. The only way I might consider it is if we could also include another woman at a different time," he suggested, trying to find a middle ground. "No, you wouldn't have to interact with her. That could be just..." "For me," Lisa offered, attempting to negotiate. "I said no, Lisa. The idea of you with another woman upsets me. Let's drop this idea. It's off the table, Dave asserted firmly. Then that answers my question. We can't include another guy either, Lisa realized, recognizing the impasse in their conversation. The finality in Dave's tone signaled the end of her hopes for this particular fantasy. The next day, when Lisa spoke to John about the conversation, he was clearly upset, accusing her of not trying hard enough and then giving her the cold shoulder for the remainder of the week. Frustrated and disappointed, Lisa was left to deal with the fallout of their failed negotiation and the tension it created. On Monday, John requested a private conversation with Lisa after everyone else had left. He appeared genuinely saddened as he expressed his inability to continue being around such a beautiful woman who wasn't available to him sexually. Lisa found herself forced to choose between him and her husband, and she chose her husband. Despite the pain it caused John, he respected her decision, bid her goodbye with a kiss, and asked her to remember him fondly. He understood that their relationship had to revert to a professional one, and began to walk away. Wait, John halted and turned back. Give me another week, please. What do you have in mind? Inquired Lisa. I'm not sure, Lisa. Just grant me a week to come up with something. With another kiss, they parted ways. Observing Lisa's return to her distracted state over the weekend, Dave contemplated her recent mood swings and her newfound fixation on three-ways. Now he had another concern. Why was her lipstick smudged when she returned home late on Friday? It was time to do some investigation. Having had ample time over the weekend to mull things over, Lisa eagerly approached John after work on Monday. His eyes brightened as she explained her plan. However, midway through, he interjected. John raised a cautious note as they discussed their plans. You know, Lisa, he might expect something in return for this, John warned. Lisa, mindful of her boundaries, replied confidently, There are certain concessions I'm willing to make, but I also have clear lines that I won't cross. We'll just have to see how things unfold. John, wanting to ensure clarity and commitment, warned, Just remember, dear, if he ultimately doesn't agree, then I'm pulling out of our plans altogether. I understand, John. If that's the outcome, I'm prepared to accept it, Lisa acknowledged. John expressed his understanding, offering himself as a practice subject if needed. With his implied approval, Lisa spent the majority of Tuesday and Wednesday at work devising her strategy. She began with the fundamental premise that whatever action she took must pose no risk to her marriage and family. She likened it to a game of poker, where she had won a $1,000 pot and was unwilling to risk it. She desired to secure it in a time-delayed safe, ensuring its safety even from herself. This way, she could continue playing, knowing she might win another $1,000, but even if she lost, she still retained the original pot. On Wednesday evening, John treated her to dinner for a complete rehearsal. Following the main course, he instructed her to give it her best shot. Well, John, I've decided to come at him strong and swiftly tomorrow night, Lisa began. I'll start by expressing my deep love for him, emphasizing how much I cherish our children. You know, mentioning their future milestones like graduations, weddings, and grandchildren's christenings. Then I'll bring up our retirement plans that we've discussed. At this point, John's mind began to wander. He noted how typically women delved straight into emotional rhetoric, a tactic that might sway another woman but often missed the mark with men, who tended to lean towards rationality over emotion. Are you paying attention, John? Lisa's voice broke through his thoughts. Of course, Lisa, John replied, refocusing his attention. Following that, Lisa continued, I'll remind him that I offered him a chance to join in on harmless fun, which he declined. I'll inform him that he's left me with no choice but to seek affection elsewhere, starting with a rendezvous on Friday night. Before he can fully process this, I'll stress that it's purely physical, just a bit of emotional enjoyment. John apologized. I might need to stretch the truth a bit there. If he truly loves me, he'll allow it. I estimate I have about a 70/30th chance of him agreeing right then and there. What do you think of the plan so far? John privately estimated the odds to be much lower than that, but kept it to himself. He figured his chances of seducing this older woman were less than 50%, but the thrill of the pursuit was worth it. He believed he could enjoy it once without any risk. However, engaging in repeated encounters would exponentially increase the risk of being caught and losing his job for having a sexual relationship with a subordinate. Why take that risk more than once? He had been in similar situations before and realized that he had already experienced 90% of the enjoyment by increasing Lisa's chances of success. He might get the remaining 10%. John mentioned that if he were in Lisa's husband's place, he might have suggested they have an open relationship, but Lisa was totally against the idea of sharing her husband with anyone else. She said that if her husband suggested such a thing, she would rather end their marriage than accept it. John then suggested that Lisa had a way to stop her husband from making any moves she didn't like. He was talking about her threatening to divorce him and the possibility of him not getting to see their kids much if they split up. But Lisa didn't like the idea of using such threats, even just as a bluff. John tried to convince Lisa to stand up for herself, arguing that the mess they were in was her husband's fault for not agreeing to her suggestions in the first place. He held her hands, looked into her eyes, and told her she deserved to find her own happiness, after years of putting her family first. Lisa started to think maybe John had a point. However, she made it clear that everything depended on her husband Dave being okay with their plan. If she thought Dave wasn't on board, she would back out. John assured Lisa it was a situation where they couldn't lose, although he doubted the reality of Lisa's hopes. As they waited for dessert, Lisa took the chance to jot down some thoughts for her plan. After they finished eating, John walked her to her car, and they said goodnight with a kiss. This moment wrapped up their discussion on navigating their complicated situation, focusing on personal desires and the boundaries they were willing or unwilling to cross. On this occasion, when John gently held her, she offered no resistance. Instead, she subtly moved closer to him. She could sense his reaction through his clothing, which nearly overwhelmed her. John momentarily considered taking things further, yet he decided that it was better to maintain the playful atmosphere between them. "Okay, love. I'll book us a room for Friday night. Can we go to your place?" "I've never even seen it," John said with a hint of curiosity and excitement in his voice. "No way," she replied with a laugh, the playful tone evident in her response. "The walls are way too thin, and you'll be screaming way too much, I can assure you of that." On trembling legs, Lisa went home to her family. She was even more distracted than normal. At one point, she realized she was alone, and everyone had gone to bed. Consequently, she slept in the next day, and only woke just in time to see the kids off. She reminded them she had arranged for Dave's parents to pick them up for a sleepover that night and check that they had all they needed. She had arranged the day off. She had to call John at least 5 times to maintain her courage during the day. She knew her major Achilles heel was her inability to lie convincingly. The obvious question Dave would raise when given her ultimatum was, did she already have someone in mind? In front of a mirror, she practiced saying no. She intended on going out and allowing herself to be seduced. Anything else would spur questions she wasn't at all comfortable with. She convinced herself that by remaining cool, calm, and collected, she could pull it off. So here she was, sitting at the kitchen table, waiting to ambush her husband, who was due any minute. It was Thursday night, 24 hours short of a much-anticipated event. The kids were overnighting at their grandparents'. Lisa was totally ready. She just kept repeating to herself, "Stay firm, can't lose, I deserve this." Dave walked into the house at 5:30 p.m., an hour and a half later than his new usual time of 4 p.m. He had, likely timed his arrival, knowing that Lisa had the day off. Upon entering, he noticed Lisa sitting at the kitchen table, a 3/4 empty bottle of wine in front of her. Knowing that she rarely indulged in more than one glass, Dave immediately sensed the gravity of the situation. It was clear to him that this was not just a special occasion, but also a moment when Lisa might be more open and vulnerable. "Hi, Liz. What are we celebrating? Did you get that promotion?" Dave asked, trying to gauge the situation with a mix of curiosity and concern in his voice. "We aren't celebrating, darling, at least not yet. Please sit down." "We have to talk, Dave," Lisa responded, her tone serious and inviting a deeper conversation. Lisa was taken aback by her own nerves. Despite the Dutch courage she had summoned, she found herself more anxious than anticipated. Silently, she repeated her mantra, "Stay firm, Lisa, you can't lose, you deserve this." Dave beat her to the conversation. "I'm guessing this has something to do with your recent distraction. Maybe it's related to the fact that you've been largely absent from family life for the past 6 months? Or perhaps it's about the 5-month dry spell we've had in the bedroom, except for those 2 blissful weeks." "Dave, no, let me guess, Lisa. You still love me deeply. You envision a future together, attending our children's milestones and eventually enjoying retirement and luxury. But despite all that, because I didn't agree to your covert 3-way plan, you now plan to cheat on me with your lover. Am I right? Is it happening tonight or tomorrow night?" Dave paused, and alarm bells rang loudly in Lisa's mind. He had just summarized the first page and a half of her notes with uncanny accuracy. In a crisis, Dave's clarity of thought surpassed hers. A fact he had demonstrated twice before when he saved their children's lives while she froze. She was thoroughly shaken. In a panic, she reverted to her rehearsed speech. "But I deserve this, Dave." It would only be physical, Dave, just a bit of fun to spice things up for us emotionally." In a state of panic, Lisa proceeded with her speech, reciting a section that John had suggested the night before, although she hadn't memorized it as well as the rest. She warned Dave against sleeping with other women, threatening divorce and the loss of access to their children, along with financial consequences. Mid-sentence, Lisa noticed a shift in Dave's expression, which was neither guilt nor resignation, but rather intense and stormy. Confused by Dave's sudden change, Lisa found herself confronted with questions about names. Dave's insistence on knowing the identity of the person involved indicated the seriousness of the situation. Caught off guard and unprepared for this line of questioning, Lisa hesitated before revealing John's name, insisting that he was not the type to engage in such behavior. Dave's interrogation intensified, accusing Lisa of seeing John behind his back and citing her recent behaviors as evidence of infidelity. Despite Lisa's protests of innocence, Dave remained skeptical, questioning if John had influenced her decisions and humiliated him personally. Lisa found herself in a difficult position, feeling both deeply insulted and scared because the discussion with Dave had taken a turn she hadn't expected. She was struggling with how to prove her loyalty to him. She tried to explain that her late nights and weekends out were innocent, consisting only of conversations and dinners with John, but Dave didn't believe her. He pointed to a specific instance, when Lisa came home looking disheveled, suggesting that her appearance was indicative of a sexual encounter. In a state of desperation, Lisa raised her voice in an attempt to convince Dave of her innocence, insisting that there had been no infidelity on her part, only talking, dinners, and some kissing. She pleaded with him to believe that she would never betray their marriage. Dave, overwhelmed by the situation, covered his face with his hands, a gesture of despair. Lisa, who had never seen Dave cry, watched him closely, recognizing the signs of someone trying to hide their emotional pain. The realization that she could be the cause of such deep hurt in Dave was horrifying to her. The thought of losing everything over a misunderstanding filled her with panic and disbelief. In a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, Lisa recalled the last part of her prepared defense, often thought of as her ultimate escape tactic. She was ready to abandon all her plans with John and fully retreat from the actions that had led to this crisis, believing that such a concession could repair the damage. However, before she could present this solution, Dave preemptively concluded that Lisa's actions had irrevocably damaged their marriage and family, expressing a profound sense of betrayal and grief. He even accused her of threatening to separate him from their children, as well as financial devastation. As Dave walked out the door, his words resonated with a tone of finality that alarmed Lisa even more. She was momentarily paralyzed by the gravity of the situation. By the time she mustered the courage to follow him, Dave was almost at his car. She hadn't had the opportunity to offer her last-ditch solution. Close to his car, she tried to assert her innocence once again. Dave paused but didn't turn to face her. His response underscored his view of her actions as unforgivable. He equated her spending time away from the family, lying about her reasons, going to dinner with John and kissing him as forms of cheating. With a tone of resignation, Dave declared the end of their relationship, leaving Lisa to confront the reality of her choices and their impact on her marriage. Lisa dropped to her knees, too stunned and overwhelmed to hold herself up. She watched her husband drive away, too shocked to shed a tear. Can't lose, she reflexively recalled her preparations for their confrontation. The idea of discussing the end of their marriage had only crossed her mind when she made her hollow threat. She had never imagined Dave could consider ending it too. For a little over an hour, Lisa allowed herself to wallow in self-pity. The realization that she might have irreparably damaged a wonderful relationship was too daunting to face, so she pushed it to the back of her mind. Yet another concern lingered heavily. Dave's parting words and his demeanor had triggered alarm bells in her head. For the first time, she worried about how her ultimatum had truly affected her husband, a man devoted to her and their family. She feared he might harm himself. Would he? She had made it clear what they both knew. In a divorce, he would likely lose custody of their children and a significant portion of his assets. They were aware of cases where ex-wives denied access to children, aided by biased court systems. Would he consider harming himself? Damn, yes. Panic set in. Dave didn't answer his cell phone. Lisa called her in-laws to check if Dave was with them, but he had left. They were perplexed. Dave had only stayed briefly before departing after hugging their 3 children. Lisa hurriedly drove to every bar she could think of, searching for his car. She was so preoccupied that she ran out of gas and had to call her dad for help. Recognizing her distress, he drove her home. There, she broke down and confided in her parents that Dave had left her. She witnessed the pain reflected in her mother's eyes, her father's remarks making his opinion of his son-in-law clear. Eventually, her mother relented, agreeing it was best for Lisa to return home and dropped her off at her car. Lisa went home and, in the early hours of the morning, fell asleep on the couch. Nightmares jolted her awake at 7 a.m. Before she could shake off the grogginess, panic engulfed her. She frantically checked her phone for messages, finding none. She dialed Dave's cell, but it went straight to voicemail, as if turned off or out of battery. After all, his charger lay beside hers on the kitchen counter. She called his workplace, learning he hadn't shown up. Contacting the police, she explained why her husband had left, but they offered no assistance. By then, it was 8 a.m., so she reached out to every friend in Dave's address book, yet none had seen him. She spent the entire day driving to every conceivable place, returning home every couple of hours to check for Dave's car, which never appeared, and his cell remained unreachable. Reality briefly intruded when she received a message from John, Hyatt Room 776 p.m. The message sent shivers down her spine, but she suppressed her reaction. Dave's parents called next, still unaware of his whereabouts, and inquiring about the children. Lisa asked them to care for the kids temporarily. Back at home, Lisa collapsed. On the couch, overwhelmed with sorrow, she must have dozed off again, waking abruptly at 3:30 a.m., consumed by despair. She attempted to conjure Dave's image, but failed. Feeling an irrational certainty that he was dead, she feared losing her sanity but pushed the thought aside. With dread, she returned to her car, finding her cell on the passenger seat, neglected. There was 1 message from her eldest and 6 from John. She listened to her child's message, expressing longing for her mother but ignored the others. Until around 10:00 a.m., she scoured potential local suicide sites, searching for Dave's car, bridges, ravines, secluded areas, but found nothing. Lisa, feeling desperate, contacted Dave's parents again, but they still had no updates. She reached out to all of his friends once more. This time, when she called Dave's oldest friend, who happened to be a former boss of his, she sensed he was not entirely forthcoming. Suspecting something was amiss, she searched for his address and decided to drive by his house to check for Dave's car. Situated in an affluent neighborhood, she located the house but found no sign of Dave. As she drove away, her attention was caught by a distinctively marked Lexus parked 3 houses down. It belonged to John. The car was stationed outside another lavish residence among several others. Suddenly, the notion of seeking solace from a man who, above all, was her friend appealed to her. Parking her car, she approached the front door. She could hear subdued revelry emanating from inside, indicating a Saturday afternoon gathering. Next to the door was a panel integrated into the wall, featuring a security keypad, doorbell, and intercom button. She pressed the button. When Lisa arrived at her company, she was greeted by the general manager, Mr. Goldsmith. She asked to see John Stanhope, noticing his car outside. Mr. Goldsmith, recognizing her, invited her inside, but Lisa, conscious of her messy look, preferred to wait outside. Mr. Goldsmith agreed to fetch John for her. Shortly after, John came out to meet Lisa. He quickly made sure they were alone before he embraced her, kissed her, and then held her close against the wall. Lisa, overwhelmed by her emotions, sought comfort in John's arms, moving from a kiss to a tight hug. John was eager to understand what had transpired the night before, prompting Lisa to share her distressing encounter with Dave, who had accused her of infidelity and seemed to know about her plans with John, leading to fears that Dave might have done something drastic due to his disappearance since that confrontation. Their intense moment was abruptly interrupted by an angry woman bursting out, accusing John of betrayal and lamenting their move to escape similar issues, suggesting a history of problems. Lisa, acting on impulse, stepped in to prevent any potential harm, positioning herself between John and the irate woman. The enraged woman, seeing Lisa as an easy target, swung around and delivered a powerful backhand that sent Lisa crashing into the wall, accidentally pressing the intercom button and letting out a cry of pain. Stunned, Lisa slumped to the ground while the angry woman continued her assault on John. The situation escalated until the company's boss intervened, gently but firmly restraining John's wife and admonishing her for resorting to violence. After briefly addressing the situation, the boss instructed John and Lisa to meet with him in his office on Monday at 9. With that, he led John's wife back inside, leaving John overcome with emotion. He rushed to his car and drove off, leaving Lisa still reeling from the ordeal. Feeling overwhelmed and distraught, Lisa eventually managed to gather herself and went home. She reached out to her mom, who convinced her father to pick her up and take her to their family home. Lisa spent the night crying and slept most of the next day before starting to cry again. On Monday, the general manager of Lisa's company discussed the situation with the HR manager. They couldn't take action until they heard Lisa's side of the story, and they also agreed not to fire John until his wife decided what she wanted to do. The boss knew John's wife had taken the kids and gone to her mother's house. They decided to give Lisa until the end of the day tomorrow to contact them before considering the end of her contract. The HR manager questioned whether they believed John's claim that he and Lisa had not had sex, to which the boss responded that it was still considered cheating regardless. They lamented the complexities of human relationships, with the HR manager expressing frustration at people's inability to be content with what they have. By Monday evening, Lisa felt well enough to call her in-laws to check on the children. She believed she could face seeing the kids now, but dreaded facing Dave's parents, fearing their son might be dead because of her. She planned to find a way to convince them to drop the children home without confronting her. The word shocked hardly captured Lisa's emotions when Dave's mother informed her that all 3 kids refused to see her and threatened to call the police if she showed up. Before Lisa could respond, the call abruptly ended. Lisa woke up disoriented, lying on the kitchen floor, stiff and sore, realizing she had wet herself, which shocked her further. After a long shower, she noticed the setting sun, realizing it had been just after sunset when she made the call. Glancing at her phone, she saw it was 6 p.m. Tuesday. She had been out of it for nearly 24 hours. What had happened? Despite feeling fresher than she had in days, Lisa was determined to regain control of her life. Though the possibility of Dave's death threatened to overwhelm her, she pushed the thought aside, drawing strength from her children. She decided to visit her in-laws unannounced and bring the kids back home. Upon arriving at Dave's parents' house, she was surprised to find her own parents' car parked there. As she pulled up, they emerged from the door, swiftly guiding her back to her car. Lisa resisted, demanding to see her children. Her father informed her they weren't there and instructed her to follow them home, which she reluctantly did. Upon arriving home, Lisa found her mother preparing tea in the kitchen and immediately inquired about her children's whereabouts. Her father reassured her that Dave had the kids and was alive, indicating that they had just spoken with him. Lisa then asked about Dave's location, prompting her parents to exchange uncomfortable glances before admitting that he had taken the kids to meet some people. Lisa's mother interrupted impatiently, expressing disappointment and shame in Lisa's actions, siding with Dave's version of events over Lisa's account. Lisa felt ashamed and remained silent as her mother continued, mentioning Dave's encounter with an old friend named Deborah Harris, causing Lisa great concern. Lisa knew that Dave and Deborah had separated when she went to a business college far from their hometown, and Deborah's recent divorce confirmed Lisa's fears. Her parents revealed that when Deborah saw Dave's state, she took him home, where he had been staying since. Furthermore, Lisa's parents informed her that Dave had taken the kids to meet Deborah and her children to see if they got along. They assured Lisa that nothing had happened between Dave and Deborah before this, but they seemed to be getting along well now. Feeling outraged, Lisa insisted that Dave had to give her a chance. However, her parents recounted Dave's perspective, stating that he felt devastated by Lisa's lies about working late while cheating with another man. Lisa's father emphasized that cheating wasn't just about physical intimacy, but also included lying and engaging in intimate conversations with another man, pointing out instances that Dave had found suspicious, such as Lisa's smeared lipstick and her notes detailing plans to manipulate him. Lisa protested, claiming she didn't mean to threaten Dave, but her father expressed disbelief and disappointment in her actions, highlighting the emotional toll they had taken on Dave and the family. Lisa returned to silence, her gaze falling to the table as she observed both her parents shaking their heads in the icy disapproval emanating from them. She perceived what Dave must have felt, the web of lies, the deceit, the disrespect, and the emotional chasm that had grown between them over the past 6 months became starkly clear. She realized that her marriage was beyond repair. Her parents allowed her some time to process it all before her mother spoke up. "How are the kids and I going to survive without Dave?" Lisa inquired, her voice tinged with worry. Her parents exchanged a somber glance, prompting her father to nod at her mother, who took a deep breath before delivering Dave's message. "Lisa, Dave has been grappling with the idea for the past 5 days, wondering if the children would be better off with you or with him. However, due to the threats you've made against him, he feels he can't risk leaving them with you." Her mother glanced at her father again, seeking his support, which he provided by squeezing her hand gently. "We have to be honest with you, Lisa. We share his concerns," her father added. "From our perspective, if we were to support you, there's a possibility we might lose access to our only grandchildren." Lisa was taken aback, needing a moment to absorb the weight of their words. As frustration brewed within her, she couldn't help but voice her dismay. "So you're siding with him?" she accused, feeling a sense of betrayal. Her father's response was swift. "You initiated this, Lisa." But Lisa remained undeterred. I'll fight all of you. The courts tend to favor the mother in custody battles. He can't prove I cheated because I didn't. Lisa, it's not about proving anything, her mother interjected. Dave simply wants out of the marriage. The children are old enough for their preferences to matter in court. And let me tell you, if the court had asked them tonight, you wouldn't stand a chance. And if I win, you'll likely lose custody rights for good. The gravity of her mother's words sank in, leaving Lisa reeling with the harsh reality of her situation. With her last bridge burned, Lisa ran to her car, and they both screamed off. Epilogue. 2 weeks later, an interim court order was issued. It favored Dave due to his stable employment, strong bond with the children, 6-month role as primary caregiver, and stable living situation. Additionally, the children's preferences were considered, enhancing his proposed visitation rights. On the opposing side stood Lisa, financially insecure, with no job or references, unable to afford the home's buyout. The judge's decision was made with confidence. As the mandatory 12-month separation period ended and the divorce was finalized, Lisa regained much of her former self. Her parents forgave her, and she dedicated herself to being a devoted mother, especially during fortnight sessions. She even agreed to attend a wake with Dave and his new fiancée. Upon receiving the final divorce papers, though, she received a harsh email from John, blaming her for his divorce and job loss. She attributed the failure of her marriage to her own greed. She realized she had been discontented with what she had and sought more. The only lingering issue affecting her otherwise resigned contentment were the recurring nightmares, gradually diminishing from nightly to once or twice a week. One particularly unsettling dream featured a choir singing, "Stay firm, can't lose, I deserve this." Yet nowadays she found solace in being able to return to sleep relatively easily by reminding herself that achieving 1 out of 4 goals wasn't so bad after all.
Story 3.
The bridge, not long or wide, is a simple wooden structure that spans the narrow yet profound gap between past disappointments and future uncertainties. Let me introduce myself. I'm Lyle Jetterman, now 38, a man who previously only differed from others in that he was the husband of 36-year-old Gloria and the father of 12-year-old Robert and 8-year-old Anna. It's a pleasant family picture, albeit with a significant financial burden. To meet my duties as a husband and father, I worked at Countryman Realtor for 5 years before Gabriel Zillow bought the company from Bernie Schleifer. Real estate wasn't my first career choice, or even my desired one. I started my career after graduating from law school. At that time, I had been married to Gloria for 3 years, and she was pregnant when I graduated. The job market for young lawyers wasn't very promising, but Gloria's pregnancy gave me a strong incentive to find a job that could support my family. The initial job I secured was at a law firm specializing in representing banks during home loan closings. It wasn't the career I had envisioned, but it was employment. While I pursued my law degree, Gloria worked as a bank teller to support us both. Her earnings covered rent and necessities, while I worked part-time jobs to supplement our income. My education was funded through loans and scholarships, but I aimed for a future with the Department of Education. Since Gloria became pregnant around my law school graduation, I accepted the job offer, marking the first of many compromises in married life. In those bygone days, banks extended loans to individual home buyers for house purchases, a profession considered genteel for lawyers. I sat at the desk handling house flipping transactions on behalf of lending institutions. During mortgage closings, buyers paid the bank a commission of roughly $500 for my services. The law firm received this sum along with an additional $500 from the insurance company. Each successful closing meant earning a solid $1,000 when we sealed the deal. Naturally, the firm profited, and I received a small portion as my salary. It seems all good things must end, and honorable frugality gives way to insatiable greed. Shortly after my wife Gloria gave birth to our second child, the consolidation of small banks into larger ones, which were then absorbed by even bigger ones, reshaped the banking landscape. Retail loans became obsolete as banking transitioned into a wholesale trade, operating at an industrial scale. Each morning, I'd confront a stack of mortgage paperwork at work, slated for same-day closings. While profits likely soared, the frenetic pace of simultaneous house closings left me with an uneasy feeling about the sustainability of this model. Over my 7-year legal career, I didn't advance to partnership, but ascended to the esteemed status of a private contractor, earning $75 per closing. With 7 or 8 loans closed daily, 5, and sometimes 6 days a week, my income was respectable. However, I harbored doubts about the longevity of this arrangement, sensing an impending downturn. Bernard Schliefer, or Bernie as he preferred, approached me. Seeking a legally savvy individual, Bernie aimed to expand his company, Countryman Real Estate. With his main contract transitioning to the Sunbelt, Bernie eyed growth. His company held shares in the Scarlet Woods development, boasting 100 approved lots with plans for 400 more. Strategically located 2 miles from a tech park with 2,000 high-tech jobs on the horizon, Bernie, a builder-developer, excelled at securing financing for growth projects. However, he struggled to market to homeowners seeking upgrades or adjustable-rate mortgages. Strangely enough, when Bernie and I first met, everything clicked. I thrived on selling houses and paid close attention to details, especially when it came to managing the flurry of paperwork involved in transactions. Drawing from lessons learned from previous employers, I implemented profit center strategies, boosting Bernie's sales by leveraging partnerships with home insurance agents, movers, gardeners, and more. We swiftly evolved into a comprehensive agency with one goal: maximizing home sales and capitalizing on associated services. Bernie wasted no time in initiating construction projects, while I diligently managed day-to-day operations. He handled major deals, while I took care of smaller ones, earning a handsome salary as his trusted employee. Bernie foresaw the impending crisis. Bear Stearns served as a precursor, but the collapse of investment bank Lehman Brothers was the catalyst. Despite the looming catastrophe, Bernie remained optimistic, believing in real estate's inherent resilience. While the market plummeted, Bernie remained unfazed, confident in its eventual rebound. I focused on maximizing every opportunity, channeling profits into larger and more lucrative rural properties as part of Bernie's investment strategy. Bernie had only one concern. He felt like a significant figure in a small arena and desired to dive into the vast ocean. One evening, during drinks after work, he dropped the bombshell. "I've sold everything." "What? Take it easy. The new owner won't shake things up, at least not right away." Once again, Bernie proved correct. Upon meeting Gabe Zello, my initial impression was of his youthfulness. Not yet 30, he orchestrated Bernie's buyout. Taller and younger than me, Gabe possessed a striking, blonde-haired, Adonis-like appearance, embodying the epitome of a business prodigy superstar. Though I should have felt envy toward the young man, his charm and amiability made it difficult to be resentful. Working for him proved enjoyable as well. Approaching 50, Bernie was ambitious, yet fundamentally cautious. In contrast, Gabe thrived on transparency and risk-taking. He operated with everything laid bare for all to see, always pushing the boundaries. It became evident early on that his investment in a rural property had stretched his finances thin. Gabe leaned more toward financing than construction, and leaned more into management than salesmanship. He relished in quick profits, and when the real estate market rebounded, his wager on Countryman Real Estate clearly paid off. Meanwhile, Bernie headed to Florida, drawn to the allure of a large real estate venture. The night before his departure, I wished him luck. "Come with me, baby," he said. "No, I'm not a child anymore. I have a wife and 2 teenagers to support," I replied. "Okay, but someday you'll regret it." I hoped not, but I checked the job market. There's not much left of my old company. Stephen Pender, one of the junior partners, managed to weather the collapse. He was glad to hear from me, but offered only a third of my current earnings, so I worked diligently to ensure Countryman Real Estate stayed afloat. Overall, I was content working for Gabe, as we called him. He treated me well and allowed me to manage the office day to day. Did I have any doubts about him? Yes, but my only grievance with the boss was minor. Bernie never hosted a formal Christmas party, but Gabe took it to the opposite extreme. He rented one of the finest vacation spots in Saratoga, albeit during the off-season, for a hefty sum. The next party, held on the first Saturday in December, was for staff, contractors, bankers, and realtors. It was a lavish affair with a large guest list. Gabe spared no expense. Well, it was his money, and perhaps there was a legitimate business rationale behind it all. My discontent began around midnight and intensified throughout the night. You see, I arrived with the most attractive woman in the venue on my arm. I married Gloria right after college when we were both barely 22. While I was in law school, she worked a dead-end job to support us. I'll always be grateful to her for that, but she became pregnant by stopping birth control while I studied for the bar exam. In hindsight, the pregnancy may have been for the best. We've been good parents then and still are now. While I struggled with renting houses, Gloria raised our kids and worked nights to earn her doctorate in child psychology. When our youngest child started school, Gloria returned to work, landing a job at the State Department. She also embarked on what I now call her running career. Gloria could be described as chubby, especially compared to some undernourished models. But at 30, she transitioned from swimming at the YWCA pool twice a week and jogging occasionally to running long distances solo every morning. She started waking early to trek 5 miles cross-country. Each evening, she dedicated half an hour to sprinting. She held the fastest time among local female runners and was only surpassed once by national competitors in local 5K and 10K races. She even participated in the New York City Marathon 3 times, ranking among the top 100 women finishers. I'm not a stay-at-home type. I hit the gym at least 3 times a week and bike 20 miles on summer weekends. However, with over 5% body fat, I don't boast a physique sculpted by Michelangelo. I stood by Gloria in her endeavors, witnessing her early morning routines and returning sweaty as I woke the children. I felt proud of my wife. So when I entered the Christmas party with this tall, dark-haired beauty on my arm, conversations hushed and heads turned to behold the striking Gloria. Standing just over 6 feet tall in her 3-inch heels, she matched my height perfectly. Her raven locks cascaded over her shoulders, shimmering in the ballroom lamplight that evening. Despite her efforts to attend the party, Gloria wore a new form-fitting black dress. The scallop-trimmed attire hinted at her cleavage and was daringly short, showcasing her fabulously long runner's legs. This dress accentuated her flat stomach and sculpted rear, drawing admiring gazes. No longer a chubby girl, my wife exuded confidence as a remarkable woman. In Gabe's arms, she wasted no time in greeting us and joining him for a dance. Although I couldn't deny they made a lovely couple, his attentiveness seemed to border on inappropriate. Shortly before midnight, he approached her and kissed her passionately beneath the mistletoe. While I wasn't jealous, yes, my wife was attractive, but I trusted her. We had weathered many hardships together. From years of law school to raising children and paying off school loans, we had overcome illness and feticide. I felt sorry for couples who hadn't faced such trials together. It's adversity that strengthens a marriage. Gloria and I had faced everything together and remained deeply in love. As Gloria reveled in the attention while drinking, I dismissed it all as the result of the festive atmosphere. I escorted my wife home, and we didn't discuss the incident further. It was just an effect of too much hard drinks, I reassured myself. 6 months later, Memorial Day weekend rolled around, marking the halfway point of the year, which had been favorable for the real estate sector with a notable increase in clients. The final week of May experienced record-breaking heat, setting the hottest temperatures in the past decade. The company's operating account brimmed with cash from home sales, scheduled for deposit on the first business day of June. We planned to review the checks and electronically pay the banks when the office reopened after the 3-day weekend. "Are you joining us for the weekend camping trip?" Gabe inquired. He had rented a mountain cabin in the Adirondacks for Memorial Day weekend and had been talking about it incessantly for weeks. Though his invitation extended to Gloria and me, I was hesitant. "I'm not sure what Gloria's plans are," I replied, attempting to decline politely. "Oh, she's coming. She's looking forward to it," Gabe insisted confidently. I regarded him with uncertainty. "We discussed it on the phone," he added hastily. Why did I doubt him? Nevertheless, after he departed, I called Gloria, and indeed, she was enthusiastic about the trip. Reflecting on it now, I realized that this was the pivotal moment to avert disaster, but I failed to recognize it. I loved Gloria deeply and trusted her implicitly. According to MapQuest, the journey to Gabe's house would be challenging. I traded my Honda Accord for a 4-wheel drive SUV at the rental place. The last 20 miles of the route were along mountain roads, with the final 3 miles on dirt tracks. Having visited the Adirondack Mountains before, I knew firsthand their rugged nature. Gabe's residence lay southwest of Saranac Lake, and the journey took nearly 4 hours. The GPS guided us for the last 5 miles, leading us off the beltway onto the final 2 miles of semi-paved road that terminated at a sturdy wooden bridge. Though narrow, the recently renovated bridge spanned a ravine. While not excessively wide, the gap was deep, characteristic of the terrain typical of the Adirondack Mountains. It's such challenging terrain that preserves their untamed wilderness. I traversed the bridge cautiously, contemplating if there might be another route available. Despite the absence of an alternate exit on the GPS map, I felt like a mouse ensnared in a trap, wondering if there might be a lurking carnivore nearby. 3 miles along a rugged dirt road, we arrived at a 2-story house nestled on a clearing on the mountainside, roughly 1,000 feet below the summit. A dozen Adirondack peaks loomed to the north, providing a picturesque backdrop to this remote location where what appeared to be a rustic cabin had been erected. I parked the SUV in a meticulously maintained parking lot adjacent to three similarly upscale vehicles. Everything appeared pristine and meticulously tended to. The cabin itself exemplified the modern log-building aesthetic that evoked rustic charm while boasting contemporary comforts. Adorned in a fusion of modern and traditional paneling, it exuded the ambiance of a 19th century mountain retreat, albeit with modern conveniences. It was evident that Gabe had spared no expense to create this illusion. I had little doubt about his intended audience for such ostentation, and it certainly wasn't me. We were welcomed on the expansive porch adorned with Adirondack chairs and rustic decor by a group of 6 individuals. Among them were 3 young men, Gabe, and 2 of his college acquaintances. Ken Lewis, the shortest among them at about 5'10", possessed a muscular physique akin to a weightlifter, nearing his 30s. Though starting to bald like Gabe, Ken's rugged features were accentuated by his muscular frame visible beneath his tight t-shirt and shorts. The second college friend, Glenn Sachs, stood at roughly 6 feet tall, slender with curly blonde hair. He appeared more aesthetically pleasing than Ken, his arms wrapped around a blonde woman introduced as Sharon. Sharon exuded beauty with her voluptuous figure and ample bust, likely in her 30s, possibly older, and noticeably 8 to 10 years Glenn's senior. Standing beside Ken was Robin, a slightly younger woman clearly accompanying him. She possessed a bubbly demeanor, short stature, and a well-endowed physique, with bosom seemingly disproportionate to her petite frame. The final member of the group stood tall with flowing brown hair. She was Paula Henry, one of those individuals often described as beautiful, possessing attractive, yet sharply defined, not entirely feminine features. Her demeanor suggested intelligence, a trait acknowledged by herself and others. Clearly the youngest among the women, she was a schoolmate of the boys. Despite the warm and overly enthusiastic welcome we received, there was an air of peculiarity. Gabe specifically greeted my wife with enthusiasm, while I received a more perfunctory acknowledgement. Meanwhile, his friend Paula regarded me with a scrutinizing gaze, akin to one observing a laboratory specimen before dissection. Dinner arrangements were swiftly made, prompting us to hastily stow our belongings in our designated second-floor bedroom adjacent to Gabe's master suite. Seated in the expansive Great Hall, serving as a combined living room, dining area, and game room, we indulged in gourmet microwave meals around the grand oak table. Though the food was delectable, it was evident that it came with considerable expense and minimal effort. Wine flowed generously, and I monitored my intake, mindful of my host's persistent attempts to replenish our glasses. Post-dinner, the group congregated around the gas fireplace on the terrace, where potent drinks and herb made an appearance, setting the tone for a weekend characterized by revelry and mild use. As I navigated through the situation with careful inquiry and astute observation, what initially seemed like a typical holiday weekend with my boss, his friends, and their partners took on a more intricate undertone. It soon became apparent that Robin had a fiancé elsewhere, while Sharon was married with 2 children and a husband waiting at home. Infidelity was treated with casual disregard and even humor. Paula remained fixated on me, seemingly detached from the group. Although she appeared to be aligned with Gabe, she showed no offense at his overt flirtation with my wife. Throughout the night, Gabe positioned himself mostly between Gloria and Paula, directing most of his conversation towards Gloria. My attempts to engage Paula were met with polite but distant interest, signaling me to refrain from further interaction. As midnight approached, the guests, still in high spirits, seemed prepared to retire for the night, yet an unspoken anticipation lingered. Suddenly, Gabe addressed me, acknowledging my probable fatigue from the lengthy drive. "Are you ready for bed, Lyle?" Gloria suggested, to which I jokingly insisted on another drink, offering it to Gabe. Internally, I fumed at Gabe's attempts to seduce my wife, questioning Gloria's behavior throughout the evening. Was she truly enamored with him? It was a night of waiting, but ultimately I emerged victorious. Returning to our designated room, Gloria entered the shower alone, and I refrained from joining her, recognizing the futility. Upon her exit, she sat undressed on the edge of the bed, inviting me to join her. "I want to enjoy this weekend," she expressed, reflecting on our challenging past and acknowledging my unwavering support. "You've been an exceptional partner and parent, sacrificing for my education and nurturing our family. Your dedication has not gone unnoticed. I'm proud to be your wife." I woke to the morning sunlight flooding through the open blinds of the spacious bedroom window. Typically, Gloria rose much earlier than I did for my morning jog, but last night's indulgence in hard drinks and bang had its effects. Rising from bed, I drew the curtains shut and made my way to the compact bathroom with a shower. Despite its size, the bathroom boasted ample amenities. After showering and shaving, I headed downstairs before the others had stirred, opting to explore the surroundings while the house was still quiet. Moving from the main room to a patio featuring a fire pit and built-in outdoor BBQ, I then ventured onto a raised terrace housing a small pool and sauna. Considering the chilly spring climate of these mountains, an open water feature seemed risky, but as I stepped onto the terrace, I discovered the entire area was heated. Solar panels adorned the higher slopes of the mountain, heating both the pool and likely the house. Crossing the terrace, I reached what appeared to be a small barn, devoid of animals but stocked with ATVs, snowmobiles, and gardening tools, including several small tractors. As I passed by, the distant sound of a babbling stream caught my attention. About 20 yards behind a locked barn with a chimney protruding from its roof, I glimpsed through a small window, spotting a generator and fuel tanks. It was evident that meticulous care was taken to ensure the provision of gasoline for recreational vehicles and emergency power through the generator. This location felt like its own secluded universe, evidently prepared for any conceivable scenario. Despite the stream appearing small and shallow, I reconsidered its size when witnessing a fish leap from its waters. "Are you fishing?" came a voice from behind me. Turning, I found Paula standing there. "Not today, but I used to when I had more free time." "Seems like this weekend might offer you that chance." "Are you into fishing?" I inquired. "No, like you, I lack the time." "Perhaps we could have breakfast and then take a hike up the mountain. It'd be a shame to come all this way and not reach the summit," she suggested. Paula prepared coffee in the stainless steel maker while the kitchen pantry held microwave-ready breakfast options. Opting for instant oatmeal, I noticed none of the others had yet stirred. They'd likely sleep in. "How about that hike?" she proposed, smiling. With Paula evidently knowing the trail's beginning, she led us straight to it. Initially, the summit didn't seem too far, but an hour later, it felt as distant as when we began. "Are you sure about reaching the top?" I questioned. "Why quit now, old man?" she teased. "I'm just thinking about what the others will say when they find us missing." "Don't worry, I doubt they'll mind." Finally reaching the summit, the sun positioned nearly overhead indicated noon was nearing. The mountain's peak was somewhat underwhelming, with a flat area bordered by rounded edges. 2 weathered wooden benches faced east, offering views of the gatehouse and several distant peaks to the south and east. Though the fog obscured distant vistas, the air felt crisp and pure. Seating herself, Paula appeared content to soak in the view. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. "I'd like to rest before heading back down." "No, the old man could use a rest," I responded, prompting a smile from me. "So Glenn is a broker, Ken is a banker, and Gabe is a developer. But despite talking all night, I never found out what you do," I remarked, eyeing her thoughtfully. She seemed to weigh the question, assessing the potential consequences. "I'm an inspector. I work for the government. It's a low-paying and rather dull job," she divulged. "Have you inspected anyone we know?" I inquired. "Not recently. Back in college, it felt like I was always bailing them out, covering for them with angry girlfriends or providing cheat sheets for exams. They were always on the edge. That's what makes them who they are. Extraordinary young people," she explained. "So, is this your job now? Covering for them? What's the point of closing the barn door after the horse is bolted? It won't help you retrieve your horse. Rules just hold things back. It's better if smart people rise to the top and the rest step aside. Ultimately, everyone benefits according to their own merits," I mused. "What about your role this weekend? You didn't attend the party last night," I pointed out. She fell silent, caught off guard by the question. I rose and moved to where I could see the road leading down the mountain. There was only one way out. The way out. Turning back to Paula, I scrutinized her. Had she considered this? The others, I realized in a moment of insight, were entirely oblivious to anything beyond their own physical desires. But was she? Clearly, she was observant. She must see the issue as I did. "I'm just here as the designated sober one. I ensure everything runs smoothly, intervening only if absolutely necessary," she explained. "Meaning, unless the Golden Boys need you," I summarized. "I wouldn't put it like that, but I certainly prioritize what's best for them, for everyone, in the long run," she clarified. "Shall we head downstairs?" I suggested. "What's the rush? The journey back will be quicker," she remarked. "Yes, quicker, but the slope is steep and perhaps more perilous. You could take a nasty fall," I cautioned. "Why worry when you're already at the top?" she retorted, though she rose and began to descend. We returned to the lodge without incident, yet my concerns intensified. Finding the others by the pool, I was taken aback by my wife's appearance in a black bikini, revealing her body in a manner I hadn't seen before. The other women were similarly clad. As Paula and I approached, I witnessed my wife seated on Gabe's lap, engaged in a passionate kiss. "We're back!" Paula's shout interrupted Gabe and Gloria's kiss. Gabe grinned mischievously while Gloria's smile seemed forced. "Where have you two been?" Gloria asked casually, breaking the awkward silence. My fists clenched instinctively, but Paula squeezed my hand. "Well, since we missed lunch and conquered the mountain, we deserve some food," Paula declared, pulling me towards the cabin. As we left the pool area, I heard muted laughter. I wasn't sure what Paula had prepared, and if I ate anything, I couldn't recall. She handed me a glass of straight black Johnny Walker, which burned as it went down. "Think before you act," she advised. "It's just one weekend in a good marriage, and you need to consider your family." Returning to the pool, the couples were already settled in the jacuzzi, laughing and giggling. My wife remained seated on Gabe's lap. I couldn't see their hands underwater, but I assumed they were occupied. A joint was passed around, and it was evident that everyone was intoxicated. Paula positioned herself where she could keep an eye on things, placing herself between the jacuzzi and me. I pretended to drink more before discreetly walking away. Out of sight, I poured out the contents of my glass. It was a strange mix of jealousy and pride. I was proud of my wife's transformation from the chubby girl I married to the beautiful, athletic woman she had become, rightfully desired by others. I took pride in the fact that men longed to be in her loving, strong arms. But what about her inner self as she sculpted her physique? Seeing her with Gabe had an oddly alluring quality. I could picture their flawless bodies entwined physically, a nightmarish yet exhilarating image. I strolled around the lodge grounds, observing its operations, passing time while dreading the direction things seemed to be heading, realizing that ultimately, I might need to take control of my options. Entering our bedroom, I made a deliberate attempt to sleep. As I lay there, trying to quiet my mind, the question of why my wife was flirting and kissing another man lingered. We had weathered many hardships together, from our early struggles with poverty to our children's illnesses and the constant financial strain of living on a middle-class income. We were finally starting to climb towards stability. Our children had reached an age of independence, my wife had a modest but steady career, and I was earning a good income after years of financial struggle. Our debts were manageable and our future looked promising. So why risk it all for someone as shallow and empty as Gabe Zillow? Behind his charm and boldness, there was nothing substantial. Strip away the flashy exterior and there was emptiness. Gabe had never designed a site plan, built or sold a home. He was the figurehead of a business run by others, a wealthy individual with no real substance, a prodigy whose only asset was his image. What was Gloria thinking? She claimed she just wanted to have fun this weekend. Was this her idea of fun? And how would it end? I must have fallen asleep because when I descended the stairs, they had already gathered in the main room. Lunch had passed, but the drinks were still flowing and joints were being passed around. Gloria was back in Gabe's lap, and there was no denying they had kissed. The women had removed their bikini tops, including Paula, who seemed to be sharing Ken with Robin. I headed straight for the kitchen to heat up dinner in the microwave when Gloria walked in. "How are you?" she asked. "It could have been better," I replied. There was a moment of hesitation before she spoke again. "I spent the evening with Gabe," she confessed. "I noticed," I said as the microwave beeped. She gave a strange smile when I turned to attend to the microwave. "No, I mean tonight, in his room." I remained very still, facing away from her, not wanting her to see the pain she was causing. "I see. But what about our 16 years of marriage?" I questioned. "That's why I can do this. It's only for the weekend. Next week I'll be all yours again," she assured. "And Gabe won't mind?" I retorted. She hugged me from behind, burying her head against my back. "Gabe likes you. He thinks you two are going somewhere. It's just a fling. A little fun for the weekend, okay?" she asked, her words punctuated by hugs. "Can I choose?" I inquired. "Not really. It's decided. I'm just letting you know," she replied. She released me, and I heard her leave the kitchen. I walked to where the kitchen opened into the main room. They were already heading up the stairs. Gabe glanced back, smiling and giving me a thumbs up as if we were on the same page. He whispered something to Gloria, who turned around, waved, and smiled at me. I returned to the kitchen, feeling as though everything we had been through together meant nothing. My wife had left me and humiliated me. I discarded the food from the microwave and made coffee instead. It was going to be a long night. As the water started to boil, I heard footsteps entering the kitchen. I turned to find Paula observing me. "I didn't expect there to be caffeine. Wouldn't something else be better?" she queried. "Everyone has their preferences," I replied. "But tell me, what's your role here?" She shrugged in response. "I'm just trying to ensure things remain calm." "And how do you plan to do that? By sleeping with me?" She chuckled. "No, I wouldn't go that far. But don't lose hope. You'll have your wife back, and maybe even a bonus." "So, there's money involved," I noted. "Isn't it always the case? You can't make waves when you work for this man. You have to consider your family. What choice do you have but to accept what's offered? This is their world, not yours. That's just how it goes." A sharp moan of pleasure echoed from above. "Seems like she's having a good time," Paula grinned. "Well, good for her. A delightful weekend for everyone in the mountains. You know, these rocks have stood here for ages. Our existence is merely a fleeting moment for them. Thousands of years ago, they were buried under layers of ice that carved through them, forming the rivers and gorges we now navigate to make our world livable. Sometimes we forget how fragile our existence is. Remove one small piece and our world crumbles. Only then do we realize it's all an illusion." Paula laughed. "Wow, you're quite the philosopher." "No, just someone who understands what truly matters, striving to discern the genuine from the fleeting illusions." She probably assumed I wouldn't stir up any trouble, leaving me alone with my coffee and my anguish. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, I ascended the stairs. Passing the master bedroom door, I was greeted by loud screams and pleasure-filled moans from my wife. She had always been quiet during our carnal moments, but it seemed he brought her more satisfaction. Younger and more vigorous, he excelled in every aspect. It appeared my wife had found the pleasure she sought in his embrace. I showered and changed into warm attire, anticipating the cold outside. I tried to drown out the noises echoing through the walls as I waited. By the time silence finally descended upon the house, it was well past 3 o'clock in the morning. Waiting another 30 minutes, I ventured downstairs. In a kitchen cabinet, I discovered a flashlight and candles with matches. A prudent measure, I reasoned, in case reality severed our connection to electricity. The night enveloped the surroundings in a profound darkness, with the moon having already set. The nocturnal symphony of the mountains, though, felt like silence to someone accustomed to city life. I easily located a barn and a 20-gallon plastic canister filled with motorsports gas. A wrench lay nearby. Though a padlock secured the generator shed door, the hinge mechanism had succumbed to rust. The wrench swiftly liberated it. The house's owners had thoughtfully provided a manual gasoline pump, enabling me to swiftly fill the canister. In less than 10 minutes, I navigated around the lodge to reach my rented SUV's parking spot. I loaded a gas can into the back, released the handbrake, and shifted the transmission into drive. Allowing the car to roll downhill, I started it up and drove off cautiously as I neared the bridge. Carefully navigating it, I halted upon reaching the gravel road. Taking my time, I ensured the gasoline seeped into the bridge's wood. It was a meticulously crafted structure, a testament to skilled artisans who took pride in their work. Regular folks had built this bridge to facilitate the leisure of those who profited off the toil of others. But the fun was about to come to an abrupt end. Dropping the match, it sputtered before igniting. Flames swiftly erupted, and I quickly retreated as a fierce explosion of heat and fire ensued. The wooden bridge crackled and collapsed into the inferno, its blaze likely visible for miles around. Turning back to my car, I drove away leisurely. There was no need to hurry. Anyone who witnessed the fire was now stranded on the other side. I was confident I'd be long gone before they realized their predicament. By the time dawn broke, I was already stopping at a gas station off the highway. Filling up the SUV, I left the empty canister at the pumps, certain someone would eventually collect it. Any link between the fire and me would vanish. Returning the SUV around 9 a.m., I retrieved my car. After showering and dressing casually for the office, I had 2 final tasks to sever ties with Countryman Real Estate. Bernie, though a good boss, was forgetful, often leaving items in his office. With keys to every door and filing cabinet, I had easy access. Gabe, meticulous with his belongings, kept the combination to his desk safe, in a folder labeled Security, stored in a locked closet. Thanks to Bernie's keys, I gained entry and retrieved the password diary from the safe, accessing the company's personal account. It would have been simple to abscond with everything, but that wasn't my intent. Theft would only lead to trouble. Instead, I transferred the operating account to another. Initially, when I joined Countryman, we established a trust account for deposits, as per state regulations. Over time, new trust accounts were created for each project, while the original was forgotten. Although the previous account was archived, it wasn't recorded in the ledgers. It remained empty until I injected nearly $20 million into it. Safeguarding all our cash, I bolstered our line of credit as a precaution, ensuring my actions didn't seem hollow. Nothing was stolen. Everything remained intact. However, it would take days to locate and return the funds. In the wee hours of Tuesday morning, electronic transfers will hit an empty account, halting hundreds of payments. Unsure of the extent of damage, our reliance on credit left us vulnerable. Remove that lifeline, and we'll face tough times, at least temporarily. It'll be an uphill battle for Countrymen to rebuild their creditworthiness. The longer the shortfall persists, the more dire the situation becomes. With luck, Gabe will still be away in the mountains. On Tuesday, once all is set, I'll print my resignation letter before departing the office. As I was about to leave, placing the letter on Gabe's secretary's desk, my cell buzzed. Glancing at the screen, I saw Gloria's photo, but I let it go to voicemail, though I couldn't resist listening.
"Where are you, baby? The car's missing and I'm worried sick. Call me,"
her voice pleaded. About 30 minutes later, Gabe called.
"Hey, Lyle, you okay? Gloria's frantic. Call her,"
he urged, with a hint of threat at the end. Oddly, it amused me. On Sunday, Gloria called 3 times, with 2 more calls from Gabe, the latter sounding more forceful, insisting I get in touch. Monday morning, I fetched the kids from Gloria's parents. As I left, Gloria called again.
"Be home tonight. We need to talk. If you get this call,
I'm really worried," she implored.
"This is childish," she added.
I doubted she'd return. At her parents', they were expecting me. Gloria called again, saying,
"You might be on your own picking up the kids."
Her mother urged me to call, while her father suggested waiting until she returned. "There are things we need to sort out," he remarked. Personally, I aimed to steer clear of familial debates. They weren't pleased, but there wasn't much they could do. My daughter sensed tension, but I assured her, "This is between Mom and me. We'll discuss it when she returns, out of fairness to her." After settling the kids in, I retreated to our old bedroom and dialed Felix Rodriguez. "How's it going, Lyle?" he greeted. "Not great." "Felix, I need your expertise," I confided. Felix, a top-notch family lawyer and stand-up guy, listened attentively. "What's going on?" he inquired. "I need to file for divorce," I stated firmly. We delved into details over an hour, scheduling an appointment for late Tuesday to kickstart the process. Meanwhile, calls persisted from the mountains. It seems her parents got in touch with her. The tone of the messages changed. Gloria and Gabe reached out without threats. "Hey, if I messed up, I apologize. Let's not let this weekend affect our professional relationship. It wouldn't be good for anyone if you catch my drift," Gabe stated. Later, around 5 p.m., Gloria reached out urgently. "Lyle, please call. Something's happened here. There's no bridge. We're all stuck. Call me. I need to talk," she urged. Bright and early Tuesday, I rang up Stephen Pender, my old buddy. We arranged to meet for lunch at a nearby diner. "Are you sure about this?" Stephen mused between bites. "Done deal. I've officially resigned," I affirmed. As if to emphasize, Donna, my former secretary at Countryman, called. "Lyle, they're saying you've resigned, but you've got to come in. Everything's going haywire." "Something's seriously off," Donna relayed. "Sorry, I can't. I'm no longer with the company. You should ring up Gabe. They say he's stranded in the mountains. Something about a bridge, huh? Tough break. Don't worry, though. It'll all work out. Anything else I should know?" Steve inquired. "Nope, not my concern anymore," I replied. "Well, if you're sure, I think I can up my last offer by $10,000 a year. Can you start tomorrow?" "Isn't that too soon?" "Nope, perfect," Steve confirmed. Wednesday morning, I joined Pandare and Partners. Just settling in that afternoon, I had an unexpected visitor. "Where's my money?" "You're an idiot," Gabe Zello stormed in. "What money are you talking about?" "You know, operating funds." "Sorry, you might want to chat with the company accountants." "If I do that, I'll sue you for embezzlement," he threatened. I just smirked. He found his way down that mountain. "But where are the operational funds? You think you're some hotshot lawyer, but you're just an idiot who can't satisfy his wife. She really enjoyed her time with me, and I'll keep her happy whenever I feel like it." He spat, then stormed off. The next day, the police called me to the station for questioning. "Sorry, I've just started a new job. My time's tight, but..." I can respond to your questions in writing and call you back, I offered. The officer tried to explain they don't usually do that, but I insisted, citing my profession. After some back and forth, he hung up. I anticipated the police would need to investigate the embezzlement claim, tracing the money. They'd find it in the company account where I deposited it days ago. I figured that'd be the end of it. A civil matter at most, and an unsuccessful one. I was mistaken. It took them a fortnight to track down the missing funds. By then, Countryman was in dire straits. Its credit had been completely cut off by the banks, necessitating an infusion of new capital to reopen it. Gloria arrived late Friday evening with both our trip suitcases. Her key no longer worked due to my changing the locks. I met her at the door.
Please, Lyle, let me in.
Think about the children if not for me, she pleaded. No, you don't live here anymore. I parked your car on the street. I assume you still have the keys, I replied. Do you hate me that much? Yes, I affirmed, closing the door. I decided she would go to her parents. I instructed Felix to serve her with a restraining order and file for divorce. The brief reprieve the bridge provided paid off handsomely. With Felix's help, she was kept away, and I gained temporary custody of the children. It took her 2 months and likely every penny she had to get back on her feet. By then, the divorce proceedings were well underway, needing only finalization. Gabe Zillow wasn't as fortunate. Countryman Real Estate had to shut down, ceasing operations right after Labor Day. The following week, I had an unexpected visitor. He sat in the visitor's chair upon my return from closing the third deal. With a deep tan and looking healthy, he was lightly dressed for the northern autumn. Bernie, how's it going? I greeted. I'm doing all right, he replied, scanning my modest office. What brings you to the cold north? I inquired, sensing this was no casual visit. Well, here's the thing. Florida's swarming with sharks, and most of them aren't in the water. I figured I'd stick to what I know, he explained. I'm glad to see you back, I said, uncertain of his intentions. Bernie read my expression. I took a hit down there, starting over, but it seems I got lucky. This company I own seems affordable, he revealed, a smile appearing. We exchanged knowing smiles. So what's on your mind, old pirate? I asked. Well, here's the deal. I need a partner. At my age, bankers doubt any venture I start will last, and, well, you and I make a good team. What do you say? He proposed. I have very little money. You've probably heard about my impending divorce, I mentioned. Yes, I have, he acknowledged, hinting at the spreading gossip. Let's go with 10%, he offered. 50? Let's be reasonable. You said you're strapped for cash, but I'll settle for 45%, I countered. Look, 25% is fair, but it's not enough. How about 40% and an option to buy another 10% in 10 years, he negotiated. All right, let's hope I live to see it, I quipped, knowing he'd likely outlast me. Bernie and I were back in business. We acquired every lot owned by Countryman at a discount using the same bank's funds. I anticipated challenges, but our business quickly thrived, constructing and selling homes. Life progressed as usual, as did my divorce proceedings. It largely centered on custody and visitation. Ultimately, we devised a complex joint custody and visitation arrangement. That's why I returned to a dark, empty house on Christmas Eve. Gloria had taken the children for Christmas, though I was supposed to have them. Given that Christmas fell on a Sunday, they had to return to her on Monday, her day off. The kids struggled with this routine. Approaching the house, I spotted a figure on the steps, sheltered from the cold and the light snowfall. I was beside her before recognizing my ex-wife. Gloria, what are you doing here? I inquired. She didn't seem well. Thinner than before, her eyes appeared vacant and indifferent. It was evident she had recently cried. I want to go home, she whimpered. Where are the children? I asked, sidestepping her request. With my parents. They want to come home too. We want to be a family again in our little house. What you did to us is unfair. I didn't do anything like that. Well, yes, that's true. I made a mistake, okay? It was a bad and hurtful mistake, but it was just one mistake. You're the one who tore our family apart, she accused, her voice tinged with anger. Making a conscious effort to regain composure, she said, I promised myself I wouldn't lose my temper, but you need to understand, I struggle with anger because of this. You have anger issues? I was surprised. Don't act innocent, that's not who you are. Were you just ahead of the game? I'm not naive, Lyle. You were never a saint. I know I hurt you, but it was never intentional. Do you honestly expect me to believe that sleeping with another man right in front of me wouldn't hurt? I replied. She turned away, clearly wounded by my words. I watched as she wiped her eyes, her back now facing me. It was evident she was crying. I was always the overweight one, the last choice on the dance floor. I had to settle for whoever showed interest. I was a good girl, enduring countless insults. I waited all through high school and most of college for the right person. When I met you, I thought I had found him. I was a maid when we got married. I didn't make a fuss about it, but I assumed you knew. You weren't a prince then, and you certainly aren't now. You were just an ordinary guy, but I loved you with all my heart. Yes, you were a bit sharper and more ambitious than the rest, but we were always struggling financially. I learned to adjust my expectations because of my love for you. It pained me to witness your constant struggles. Then Gabriel entered the picture, and suddenly everything seemed to improve. He possessed all the qualities a woman desires in a man. This time the prince had his eyes on me. It was incredibly flattering. After the Christmas party, he kept reaching out to me. It wasn't serious, just harmless flirting. You know, attractive women often receive attention like that. I've been approached before, but never by someone from the beautiful and powerful elite. He spoke highly of you and expressed how fortunate I am to have such an amazing boyfriend like you. I bet he was just enamored with me, I remarked. Exactly. He mentioned how hard you work and how he wants to reward you. I understood his implications. If I played nice with him, he would take care of you. I suppose I let him convince me that you would benefit if I gave in to him. And it's true. There was a part of me that desired him. It felt like there was this irrational urge guiding me toward him. I was torn between hoping something would happen over the weekend and fearing it. But once we arrived, my resistance began to fade. I turned to you and confessed. What? Are you serious? You told me you were considering sleeping with him. Okay. I didn't say it outright. But you knew what was going on and you didn't object, she said, turning to me. Tears streamed down her cheeks, dripping from her chin, and her nose was running. I trusted you. We've spent 16 years together. How could you betray me like this? I lamented. But that's the crux of it. We loved each other. It was merely a fleeting affair. It pales in comparison to what we shared before and what lies ahead. Are you so deluded to think that, after hearing your cries of pleasure for him, we can salvage anything meaningful? Oh, for heaven's sake, you can't be that naive. It was all a facade. I aimed to please him. I put on quite a performance. Individuals like him demand and anticipate such theatrics. That's not how I behave in bed. And after 16 years of closeness with me, you should know that. All I know is what you did, how you degraded me. You chose the golden boy over me, the cad who offers nothing and takes everything. Powerful, isn't it? So, where is he now? What happened when the crisis hit? I'll tell you everything. He folded under pressure. We live in a society that perpetuates the dominance of the few over the many, based on the myth of some hidden brilliance they possess. Explain to me, how did this genius manage to descend the mountain so swiftly? He called for a helicopter. By then, he suspected that you had tampered with the business. It was glaringly obvious that you had sabotaged the bridge. He thought you embezzled his funds. The others began to panic. Paula insisted that this couldn't be true, that it couldn't happen like that. When the helicopter arrived, there was only space for Gabe. The rest resigned. I believe the National Guard eventually erected a temporary bridge to rescue us. Sharon and I reconciled. By then, her husband had already discovered the truth. She faced consequences just like me. Poor Robin's fiancé called off the engagement. Glenn and Ken encountered trouble, but I think they managed to resolve it with Paula's assistance. It seems it was only Gabe and us, regular folks, who truly bore the brunt of it all. But wasn't the pain sufficient? She asked, peering at me with hope. Gloria's words held a lot of truth. I wasn't entirely blameless. I toiled for Gabe, yet unlike the rest of the world, I never aligned myself with him. I knew the truth, but refused to acknowledge it to myself. I can't overlook how it transpired. They were nothing but empty promises. If scrutinized closely, one could discern a trap. But no one looked. Illusion proved more enticing than reality. We weathered through tough times, and they passed with time. What you and Gabe stripped from me was the sanctuary of my home. I'll never regain it, because those scoundrels demonstrated that what I believed in was a mirage. You and I were an illusion. With that said, I rose and made for the door of the dim, vacant house. She persisted. Answer me this, she implored. Would you prefer solitude without me, or would you rather be with me and our children around the Christmas tree tonight? I gazed at her. It would be effortless to embrace her, cherish her, bring the children back to sleep in their own beds on Christmas Eve, and pretend that what occurred never did. But all I could muster was, that's a valid question. But I lack an answer. With those words, we turned away from each other. The past cannot be altered. We must forge ahead.
Story 4.
Brandon Hargrove's fingers flew across the keyboard, lines of code appearing on his monitor in rapid succession. The soft glow of the screen illuminated his face in the dimly lit home office. At 39, he wore the focused expression of a man who had found his calling in life, both in his career as a software engineer and in his role as a husband and father. A light knock on the door broke his concentration. He swiveled in his chair to see his wife, Vanessa, leaning against the doorframe. At 35, she exuded an effortless grace, her business attire perfectly pressed despite the late hour. "Hey," she said, offering a tired smile. "Just wanted to let you know I'm heading to bed. Early flight tomorrow." Brandon nodded, his eyes lingering on her face. "Another conference?" "Yeah, big pitch in New York. Should be back by Friday." Vanessa's gaze drifted to the clutter of empty coffee mugs on his desk. "Don't work too late, okay?" "I won't," Brandon promised, even as his mind itched to return to the problem he'd been solving. "Good luck with the pitch." As Vanessa turned to leave, Brandon felt a familiar pang in his chest. These moments, brief exchanges in doorways, quick goodbye kisses had become the norm in their 12-year marriage. He couldn't pinpoint exactly when it had happened, but somewhere along the way, their lives had begun to orbit further and further apart. He turned back to his computer, fingers hovering over the keys. The house settled into silence around him, broken only by the soft hum of electronics and the distant tick of a clock. This was his element, the quiet, the focus, the satisfaction of a job well done. It was what had propelled him to success in Silicon Valley, allowing him to provide the life he'd always dreamed of for his family. And yet, Brandon's eyes drifted to the framed photo on his desk. It was from their vacation to Hawaii 5 years ago, Vanessa laughing as she built a sandcastle with their daughter, their son toddling towards the camera with chubby arms outstretched. Brandon's throat tightened. When was the last time they'd all laughed together like that? He shook his head, forcing himself to refocus on the code. This was just a busy period, he told himself. Once Vanessa's big project was over, things would settle down. They'd have more time for each other, for the kids. Everything would be fine. The next morning, Brandon woke to an empty bed and a hastily scrawled note on Vanessa's pillow. "Didn't want to wake you. See you Friday. Love, V." He sighed, running a hand through his sleep-mussed hair. Another week of solo parenting lay ahead. As he went through the motions of getting the kids ready for school, Brandon couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his stomach. He watched as 8-year-old Lily carefully packed her backpack, while 5-year-old Max zoomed around the kitchen, making spaceship noises. "Daddy," Lily said, her brow furrowed in concentration as she zipped up her bag. "When's Mom coming home?" Brandon forced a smile. "Friday, sweetheart." Just like last time. Lily nodded, but her shoulders slumped slightly. "Okay, it's just she promised to help me with my science project this weekend." "I can help you with that," Brandon offered, ruffling her hair. "What's it about?" As Lily launched into an explanation about photosynthesis, Brandon felt a mixture of pride and sadness wash over him. His daughter was growing up so fast, and Vanessa was missing so much of it. He made a mental note to talk to her about cutting back on travel when she returned. The week crawled by in a blur of work deadlines, school pickups, and bedtime stories. By Friday evening, Brandon found himself pacing the living room, waiting for the sound of Vanessa's key in the lock. When she finally walked through the door, wheeling her suitcase behind her, he was struck by how tired she looked. "Hey," he said, moving to take her bag. "How was the trip?" Vanessa gave him a wan smile. "Exhausting but successful. We landed the account." "That's great," Brandon replied, searching her face for something. A spark of excitement, perhaps, or a hint of the passion that had drawn him to her all those years ago. Instead, he found only fatigue and distraction. "I'm beat," Vanessa said, stifling a yawn. "Mind if I grab a quick shower before dinner?" Brandon nodded, swallowing his disappointment. "Of course. Take your time." As she disappeared upstairs, Brandon busied himself with reheating the lasagna he'd prepared. He set the table, poured 2 glasses of wine, and waited. And waited. Nearly an hour passed before Vanessa reappeared, her hair damp and tousled. She'd changed into sweatpants in one of Brandon's old t-shirts, an outfit that used to make his heart skip a beat. Now, it just emphasized how small and fragile she looked. "Sorry," she murmured, sliding into her chair. "I guess I dozed off for a bit." Brandon pushed down the flicker of irritation that rose in his chest. "It's fine. You must be exhausted." They ate in silence for a few minutes, the clink of forks against plates echoing in the quiet kitchen. Brandon cleared his throat. "So, tell me about the trip. How did the pitch go?" Vanessa launched into a detailed account of her presentation, her eyes lighting up as she described the client's reaction. Brandon listened, nodding in all the right places, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Her enthusiasm seemed forced, almost rehearsed. And then Travis swooped in with the numbers, and that sealed the deal, Vanessa was saying, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Brandon's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Travis? Is he new on your team?" "Oh no," Vanessa replied, her cheeks flushing slightly. "He's been our sales director for about a year now. I'm sure I've mentioned him before." Had she? Brandon racked his brain, but came up empty. He forced a smile. "Right, of course. Well, it sounds like you two make a great team." Vanessa's eyes darted away, focusing on her plate. "Yeah, we work well together." The conversation lulled again, an uncomfortable silence settling between them. Brandon found himself studying his wife, noting the subtle changes in her demeanor. The way she avoided his gaze, the slight tremor in her hand as she reached for her wine glass. It was as if a stranger had taken the place of the woman he'd known for over a decade. "Vanessa," he said softly, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Is everything okay?" She startled at his touch, pulling her hand back as if burned. "What? Yes, of course. I'm just tired, that's all." Brandon's chest tightened, a cold tendril of fear wrapping around his heart. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right? If something's bothering you, or if work is getting to be too much." "I said I'm fine, Brandon," Vanessa snapped, her voice sharper than he'd ever heard it. She took a deep breath, visibly composing herself. "I'm sorry. It's just been a long week. I think I'm going to turn in early, if that's okay." Before Brandon could respond, she was up and moving towards the stairs. He watched her go, a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. Something was very wrong, and he was determined to find out what it was. The next morning, Brandon woke early, his mind churning with worry and suspicion. He padded downstairs, careful not to wake Vanessa or the kids. As he started a pot of coffee, his eyes fell on the laundry basket in the corner of the kitchen. Vanessa's suitcase sat next to it, still unpacked. Without really thinking about what he was doing, Brandon found himself rifling through the dirty clothes. He paused as his hand brushed against something silky, Vanessa's favorite blouse, the one she always wore for important meetings. As he lifted it from the basket, a faint odor caught his attention. It wasn't Vanessa's usual perfume, but something muskier, more masculine. Heart pounding, Brandon examined the blouse more closely. There near the collar was a small stain, white, slightly crusty. His stomach lurched as the implications hit him like a physical blow. No, he thought, shaking his head in denial. There had to be another explanation. Vanessa would never. But even as he tried to rationalize it away, Brandon knew in his gut what he was looking at. The distance, the late nights, the mysterious Travis, it all suddenly, horribly made sense. For a long moment, Brandon stood frozen in the kitchen, the stained blouse clutched in his trembling hands. Part of him wanted to rush upstairs, to confront Vanessa with the evidence of her betrayal. But the rational, methodical part of his brain, the part that made him an excellent software engineer, held him back. He needed proof. Incontrovertible, scientific proof. With shaking hands, Brandon carefully folded the blouse and placed it in a plastic bag. He scribbled down the address of a discreet testing lab he'd once used for a work project, then hid the bag in his briefcase. As he heard stirring from upstairs, Brandon quickly straightened up the kitchen, his mind racing. He dropped the blouse off at the lab on his way to work. In a few days, he'd have his answer. And then he'd decide what to do next. The next few days passed in a blur of anxious waiting. Brandon went through the motions of his daily routine work, family dinners, bedtime stories, all while carrying the weight of his suspicions. He watched Vanessa like a hawk, searching for any sign of guilt or deception. But if she noticed his scrutiny, she gave no indication. On Tuesday evening, as Brandon was helping Lily with her homework, his phone buzzed with an email notification. His heart leapt into his throat as he saw the sender. Discreet testing services. With trembling fingers, he opened the message. The results were clear, clinical, and devastating. The substance on the blouse was indeed semen, and it contained traces of a particularly virulent strain of syphilis. Brandon felt the room spin around him, his daughter's voice fading into background noise as the implications hit him full force. Vanessa had not only betrayed him, she had potentially exposed him to a life-threatening disease. "Daddy, are you okay?" Lily's worried voice cut through the fog of shock and anger. Brandon blinked, forcing himself to focus on his daughter's concerned face. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired. Why don't you finish up that last problem on your own? I think you've got the hang of it now." As Lily bent back over her notebook, Brandon excused himself and retreated to his home office. He closed the door behind him, leaning against it as he struggled to catch his breath. His mind raced, cycling through a whirlwind of emotions: hurt, betrayal, anger, fear. What now? The question echoed in his head, demanding an answer. Should he confront Vanessa immediately? Kick her out? File for divorce? Or should he bide his time? Gather more evidence? As the initial shock began to subside, Brandon's analytical nature reasserted itself. He needed more information before he could make a decision. And more importantly, he needed to protect himself and his children from the potential fallout of Vanessa's reckless behavior. With a deep breath, Brandon moved to his computer and began to research. He looked up symptoms of syphilis, treatment options, and long-term prognosis. The more he read, the colder his anger became. Vanessa hadn't just betrayed their marriage vows, she'd put his very life at risk. As he delved deeper into his research, a plan began to form in Brandon's mind. He would not confront Vanessa. Not yet. Instead, he would dig deeper, uncover the full extent of her deception. And when he had all the facts, all the evidence, then he would act. The sound of the front door opening jolted Brandon from his thoughts. He quickly closed his browser tabs and stood, smoothing down his shirt. As he left his office, he saw Vanessa in the entryway, kicking off her heels. "Hey," she said, offering him a tired smile. "Sorry I'm late. Last-minute client call." Brandon studied her face, searching for any sign of guilt or deception. But all he saw was the same distracted, slightly distant expression she'd worn for months. "No problem," he replied, his voice carefully neutral. "There's leftover lasagna in the fridge if you're hungry." Vanessa nodded, already heading for the stairs. "Thanks, but I think I'll just turn in. It's been a long day." As she disappeared upstairs, Brandon felt a surge of cold determination. He would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. And when he did, Vanessa would learn that betraying Brandon Hargrove was the biggest mistake of her life. Brandon sat at his desk, the glow of his computer screen casting shadows across his face. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly as he steeled himself for what he was about to do. The house was quiet. Vanessa had left for another business trip that morning, and the kids were asleep upstairs. He took a deep breath, then began typing. Years of working in tech had given him the skills he needed to bypass Vanessa's passwords and access her personal cloud storage. As he navigated through folders and files, his heart raced. Part of him hoped he wouldn't find anything, that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. But then he saw it, a folder labeled NYC trip videos. Brandon's finger hesitated over the mouse. Did he really want to see what was inside? Could he handle it? The image of the stained blouse flashed through his mind, hardening his resolve. He needed to know the truth, no matter how painful. He double-clicked. The folder opened, revealing a series of video files with dates as titles. With a shaking hand, Brandon clicked on the most recent one. The video began to play, and Brandon's world shattered. There on the screen was Vanessa, his wife of 12 years, the mother of his children, locked in a passionate embrace with another man. Brandon recognized him from photos on Vanessa's work profile. Travis Delaney, the 38-year-old sales director she'd mentioned. "Oh, Travis," Vanessa moaned on screen, her voice filled with a passion Brandon hadn't heard in years. I've missed you so much. Travis's hands roamed over Vanessa's body as he pushed her onto the hotel bed. I can't get enough of you, Vanessa. When are you going to leave that boring husband of yours and be with me? Vanessa laughed, a sound that cut through Brandon like a knife. Soon, baby. I promise. I just need a little more time. Brandon slammed the laptop shut, unable to watch anymore. He stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it to the toilet before he emptied the contents of his stomach. As he heaved and retched, sobs racked his body. The betrayal he'd suspected was now confirmed in the most brutal way possible. When he finally regained some composure, Brandon splashed cold water on his face and stared at his reflection in the mirror. The man looking back at him was a stranger, pale, hollow-eyed, with a coldness in his gaze that he'd never seen before. In that moment, something inside Brandon hardened. The shock and hurt began to crystallize into something darker, colder. Rage. He returned to his computer, forcing himself to watch more of the videos. Each one was like a dagger to his heart, but he made himself catalog every detail, every betrayal. The videos weren't just from New York, they spanned months, maybe even years. Cities all over the country, hotel rooms, even their own home when Brandon had been away for work conferences. As the sun began to rise, Brandon finally stepped away from the computer. His eyes burned from lack of sleep, but his mind was clear. He knew what he had to do. Over the next few days, Brandon began to implement his plan. He started by creating emotional distance between himself and Vanessa. When she returned from her trip, he greeted her with cold indifference. Hey, Vanessa said, wheeling her suitcase into the foyer. How were things while I was gone? Brandon barely looked up from his laptop. Fine. Vanessa paused, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. Is everything okay? Why wouldn't it be? Brandon replied, his tone flat. I don't know, you just seem off. Brandon finally met her gaze, his eyes hard. I'm fine, Vanessa. Just busy with work. How was your trip? Oh, good. Productive. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. I'm gonna go unpack. As she hurried upstairs, Brandon allowed himself a small, grim smile. Let her wonder. Let her worry. It was the least she deserved. Over the next few weeks, Brandon continued his cold treatment. He spoke to Vanessa only when necessary, avoided physical contact, and threw himself into work and caring for the children. Vanessa, caught up in her affair and her own guilt, barely seemed to notice the change at first. One evening, as Brandon was putting the kids to bed, Lily looked up at him with worried eyes. Daddy, are you and Mommy fighting? Brandon's heart clenched. He sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. No, sweetheart. Why do you ask? Lily bit her lip. You don't talk to each other anymore. And Mommy looks sad all the time. Brandon forced a smile. Grown-up relationships can be complicated sometimes, Lily. But I want you to know that no matter what happens between me and Mommy, we both love you and Max very, very much. Okay. Lily nodded, but she didn't look convinced. As Brandon turned out her light and closed her door, he felt a fresh wave of anger towards Vanessa. How dare she put their children through this? Days turned into weeks, and Brandon's cold demeanor began to have its effect on Vanessa. She grew more agitated, more desperate for his attention. One night, as they were cleaning up after dinner, she finally confronted him. Brandon, what the hell is going on with you? Vanessa demanded, slamming a plate down on the counter. You've barely said 2 words to me in weeks. Brandon turned to face her, his expression impassive. I wasn't aware I had to entertain you, Vanessa. Don't you have work to keep you busy? Or perhaps other distractions? Vanessa's face paled. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, Brandon said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Just wondering how you managed to juggle it all: work, family, your extracurricular activities. Vanessa started, but he cut her off. Save it, Vanessa. I know. The color drained from her face. Know what? Brandon laughed, a cold, harsh sound. Everything. The affair, the disease, all of it. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Vanessa stumbled back, gripping the counter for support. I can explain. Brandon's voice was quiet, dangerous. Explain how you've been fucking your coworker for months, maybe years. Explain how you brought a potentially fatal STD into our home. risking not just my health but our children's? Please, Vanessa, I'm all ears. Tears welled up in Vanessa's eyes. It's not what you think, Brandon. I was lonely. You were always so distant. Don't you dare try to blame this on me, Brandon snarled. I have been nothing but faithful, nothing but supportive of your career. And this is how you repay me. Vanessa's tears spilled over. I'm sorry, Brandon. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I never meant for it to go this far. Please, can we work this out? For the kids. Brandon stared at her, his expression cold. The kids? Now you care about the kids? Where was that concern when you were risking their future by sleeping with Travis? Vanessa's eyes widened in shock. How did you? I told you, I know everything. Brandon turned away, unable to look at her anymore. I think you should sleep in the guest room tonight. I can't even stand to be near you right now. As Vanessa fled the room, sobbing, Brandon felt a mix of emotions wash over him. Part of him wanted to break down, to scream and rage at the unfairness of it all. But a larger part, the part that had been growing colder and harder with each passing day, felt only a grim satisfaction. This was just the beginning of Vanessa's reckoning. The next morning, Brandon woke early and headed to his home office. He had an appointment to keep a video call with Neil Kavanaugh, the ruthless divorce lawyer known for leaving spouses with nothing. As Brandon logged into the call, he was greeted by the sharp, calculating gaze of Neil Kavanaugh. The lawyer's reputation for ruthlessness was evident in every line of his face. Mr. Hargrove, Neil said, his voice clipped and professional. I understand you're seeking a divorce under difficult circumstances. Brandon nodded, his jaw set. That's correct. My wife has been unfaithful, and worse, she's contracted a potentially fatal STD that she's hidden from me. Neil's eyebrows rose slightly. I see. And I assume you have evidence to support these claims? Extensive evidence, Brandon confirmed. Videos, emails, medical test results. I've documented everything. A small, predatory smile curved Neil's lips. Excellent. That will give us a significant advantage in court. Now, Mr. Hargrove, what exactly are your goals for this divorce? Brandon leaned forward, his eyes hard. I want to protect my children and myself. I want full custody, and I want Vanessa to walk away with nothing. She made her choice when she decided to betray our family. Neil nodded approvingly. With the evidence you've gathered, those goals are certainly achievable. However, I must advise you to keep your wife's illness under wraps for now. If it becomes public knowledge before the divorce is finalized, it could complicate matters. Understood, Brandon said. What's our next step? Gather more evidence, Neil replied. The more we have, the stronger our case will be. I'd also recommend hiring a private investigator to follow your wife on her business trips. It could provide valuable leverage. As the call ended, Brandon felt a sense of grim determination settle over him. He had a plan now, a path forward. Vanessa had dug her own grave, and now she was going to lie in it. Over the next few weeks, Brandon threw himself into building his case against Vanessa. He hired Evan Larkin, a discreet but thorough private investigator, to follow Vanessa on her trips. The reports Evan sent back were damning. Not only was Vanessa continuing her affair with Travis, but they were using company resources to fund their trysts. One evening, as Brandon was reviewing Evan's latest report, his phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Brandon's lip curled in disgust. He knew exactly what kind of work Vanessa was doing. He fired off a quick response. Fine. The kids miss you. It was a low blow, but Brandon couldn't bring himself to care. Let her feel some guilt for once. As the weeks passed, Brandon noticed Vanessa's health beginning to decline. She complained of fatigue and weakness, dark circles forming under her eyes. But still, she didn't seek medical help, brushing off her symptoms as stress from work. One morning, as Vanessa was rushing out the door for another business trip, Brandon couldn't help but comment. You're looking a bit pale, Vanessa, he said, his tone deceptively casual. Maybe you should see a doctor. Vanessa paused, her hand on the doorknob. I'm fine, Brandon. Just tired. If you say so, Brandon shrugged. But you know, some illnesses can be pretty serious if left untreated. Wouldn't want anything to happen to you. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, a flicker of suspicion crossing her face. What are you implying? Brandon met her gaze, his expression neutral. Nothing at all. Just concerned for your health. Have a safe trip. As Vanessa left, slamming the door behind her, Brandon felt a twinge of satisfaction. Let her worry. Let her wonder how much he really knew. A few days later, Brandon received a call from Evan Larkin. Mr. Hargrove. Evan's gruff voice came through the line. I've got some interesting information for you. Brandon sat up straighter in his chair. Go on. Your wife and Mr. Delaney aren't just using company resources for their little rendezvous, Evan explained. I've uncovered evidence of some pretty serious corporate fraud. They've been siphoning off funds, manipulating expense reports. It's big, Mr. Hargrove. A slow, cold smile spread across Brandon's face. This was exactly what he needed: leverage not just against Vanessa, but against Travis as well. Send me everything you have, Brandon instructed. And keep digging. I want to know every detail of their little operation. As he hung up, Brandon felt a surge of dark triumph. He had them now. All the pieces were falling into place. That evening, as Brandon was helping Max with his homework, Vanessa burst through the front door. She looked terrible pale, shaky, with a sheen of sweat on her forehead. Mommy! Max cried, running to hug her. Are you okay? Vanessa forced a smile, but Brandon could see the fear in her eyes. I'm fine, sweetie. Just a little under the weather. Why don't you go play in your room for a bit? Mommy needs to talk to Daddy. As Max scampered off, Vanessa turned to Brandon. I need to talk to you. Brandon raised an eyebrow. Oh, what about? Vanessa sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. I went to the doctor today. He says I might have contracted a serious illness. He wants to run more tests, but... She trailed off, her eyes filling with tears. Brandon watched her, his expression impassive. Inside, he was seething with rage. Even now, faced with the consequences of her actions, she couldn't bring herself to tell him the whole truth. A serious illness? Brandon repeated, his voice cold. However could that have happened, Vanessa? You've always been so careful with your health. Vanessa flinched at his tone. Brandon, please. I know things have been strained between us lately, but I need your support right now. I'm scared. For a moment, Brandon was tempted to reveal everything he knew, to watch her crumble under the weight of her lies. But Neil's advice echoed in his mind: keep the illness under wraps until the divorce was finalized. Instead, he stood, looking down at Vanessa with contempt. You should have thought about that before you made your choices, Vanessa. I hope, for the kid's sake, that it's nothing too serious. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. As he walked away, leaving Vanessa sobbing on the couch, Brandon felt a mix of emotions churning inside him. Anger, hurt, a perverse satisfaction at seeing Vanessa suffer. But underneath it all was a deep, aching sadness for what they had lost, for the family that would never be the same again. In his office, Brandon opened his laptop and began composing an email to Neil Kavanaugh. It was time to move forward with the divorce proceedings. Vanessa had made her bed, and now she was going to lie in it alone. Brandon sat in Neil Kavanaugh's office, his fingers drumming nervously on the armrest of his chair. The divorce papers lay on the desk between them, a stark reminder of how his life had unraveled in just a few short months. Neil leaned forward, his sharp eyes fixed on Brandon. Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed, Mr. Hargrove? Once we file these papers, there's no going back. Brandon took a deep breath, steadying himself. I'm sure. Vanessa made her choice. Now it's time for her to face the consequences. Neil nodded, a predatory smile spreading across his face. Very well. With the evidence we've gathered, I'm confident we can achieve everything you're asking for: full custody, the house, most of the assets. Vanessa won't know what hit her. As Brandon reached for the pen to sign the papers, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a warning. Was he really ready to destroy the mother of his children? But then the image of Vanessa with Travis flashed through his mind, and his resolve hardened. Let's do this, Brandon said, his voice cold as he signed his name with a flourish. Neil gathered up the papers, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Excellent. I'll file these first thing in the morning. Prepare yourself, Mr. Hargrove. Things are about to get very interesting. As Brandon left the office, he felt a mix of emotions swirling inside him: relief, anxiety, and a grim satisfaction. The wheels were in motion now. There was no turning back. When Brandon arrived home, he found Vanessa waiting for him in the living room. She looked pale and drawn, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Brandon hung up his coat, not meeting her gaze. "Out!" Vanessa stood, wringing her hands nervously. "Brandon, please. We need to talk. I got the test results back from the doctor." For a moment, Brandon's mask of indifference slipped. Despite everything, a part of him still cared about Vanessa's well-being. "And?" he asked, his voice softer than he intended. Tears welled up in Vanessa's eyes. It's not good, Brandon. The doctor says I have syphilis, a particularly aggressive strain. He wants to start treatment right away, but..." She trailed off, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Brandon watched her, conflict raging inside him. Part of him wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay. But the larger part, the part that had been hurt and betrayed, held him back. "I see," Brandon said, his voice carefully neutral. "And how exactly did you contract syphilis, Vanessa?" Vanessa's head snapped up, her eyes wide with fear and guilt. I don't know. Maybe it was from a public restroom, or don't." Brandon's voice was like ice. "Don't you dare lie to me again. I know about Travis, Vanessa. I know about all of it." The color drained from Vanessa's face. You know?" Brandon laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out? The late nights, the business trips, the way you've been pulling away from me, and the kids? I'm not an idiot, Vanessa." Vanessa sank back onto the couch, her body shaking with sobs. "Brandon, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. Please, can we work this out? For the kids." Brandon felt a surge of anger at her words. "The kids? Now you care about the kids? Where was that concern when you were risking their future by sleeping with Travis?" "I made a mistake," Vanessa cried. "People make mistakes, Brandon. Can't you forgive me?" Brandon stared at her, his expression hard. "Forgive you? For throwing away our marriage? For endangering my health and our children's future? No, Vanessa. I can't forgive that." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. "These are divorce papers. I've already signed them. You should read them carefully. I'm seeking full custody of the kids and most of our assets." Vanessa's eyes widened in shock. "Divorce? Brandon, no. Please, we can work this out. I'll do anything, go to counseling, whatever you want." "It's too late for that," Brandon said, his voice flat. "You made your choice when you decided to sleep with Travis. Now you have to live with the consequences." As he turned to leave the room, Vanessa called out, her voice desperate. "Brandon, wait. What about my illness? I need help. I need support. I can't go through this alone." Brandon paused at the doorway, not turning around. "You should have thought about that before you brought a potentially fatal STD into our home. Get help from Travis. I'm done." With that, he walked away, leaving Vanessa sobbing on the couch. As he climbed the stairs to check on the kids, Brandon felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It was done. Now he could focus on protecting his children and rebuilding their lives. Over the next few weeks, the divorce proceedings moved forward at a rapid pace. Brandon's evidence, combined with Neil Kavanaugh's ruthless tactics, left Vanessa reeling. She hired her own lawyer, but it was clear from the start that she was fighting a losing battle. One afternoon, as Brandon was reviewing some documents in his home office, he received an unexpected call from Lauren Delaney, Travis's wife. "Mr. Hargrove?" Lauren's voice was tense, barely controlled. "I think we need to talk." Brandon's pulse quickened. "Mrs. Delaney, what can I do for you?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. I received some videos of my husband with your wife." Brandon closed his eyes, a mix of guilt and satisfaction washing over him. He had anonymously sent the evidence to Lauren, knowing it would blow the affair wide open. "I see," he said carefully. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, Mrs. Delaney." Lauren's laugh was bitter. "Are you? Because from what I understand, you've known about this for quite some time." Brandon sighed. "You're right. I did know. And I'm truly sorry for not coming to you sooner. I was dealing with my own pain." "I understand," Lauren said, her voice softening slightly. I don't know what to do now. Travis is begging me not to leave him, saying it was a mistake. But how can I ever trust him again? Brandon felt a twinge of empathy for Lauren. She was an innocent victim in all this, just like him. I can't tell you what to do, Mrs. Delaney, but I can tell you that you deserve better than a man who would betray you like this. There was a long pause. You're right. Thank you, Mr. Hargrove. And I'm sorry for what my husband and your wife have put you through. As the call ended, Brandon leaned back in his chair, feeling a mix of emotions. He had set these events in motion, and now the fallout was spreading beyond just his own family. But he couldn't bring himself to feel guilty. Travis and Vanessa had made their choices. Now they had to face the consequences. The next day, Brandon received a frantic call from Vanessa. "Brandon, what the hell did you do?" she screamed as soon as he picked up. Brandon held the phone away from his ear, wincing at her volume. "What are you talking about, Vanessa? Don't play dumb with me." Vanessa's voice was shrill with panic. "Lauren knows about me and Travis. She's suing him for divorce and demanding everything. And now Travis, he's offering to testify against me in our divorce case." Brandon felt a cold satisfaction settle in his chest. "Is that so? Well, it seems like your actions are finally catching up with you, Vanessa. How could you do this to me?" Vanessa sobbed. "I'm sick, Brandon. I need help, not this destruction of everything I've worked for." "You did this to yourself," Brandon replied, his voice hard. "You made your choices, Vanessa. Now you have to live with them." As he hung up the phone, Brandon felt a mix of emotions. Part of him still cared for Vanessa, still worried about her health. But a larger part, the part that had been betrayed and hurt, felt only a grim satisfaction. The house of cards she had built was finally tumbling down. Over the next few weeks, the divorce proceedings moved forward at a rapid pace. With Travis turning against Vanessa, offering damning testimony about their affair and the corporate fraud they had engaged in, Vanessa's position crumbled rapidly. In a last, desperate attempt to salvage something, Vanessa showed up at the house one evening. Brandon found her on the doorstep, looking haggard and desperate. "Please, Brandon," she begged, her voice hoarse. "Can we talk? Just give me a chance to explain." Brandon hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. They moved to the kitchen, where Vanessa sank into a chair, her hands shaking. "I've lost everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My job, my reputation. Travis has turned against me completely. And now, with this illness, Brandon, I don't know what to do. I need help." Brandon leaned against the counter, watching her with a mix of pity and lingering anger. "What do you want from me, Vanessa? You threw away our marriage, endangered our family. What did you think would happen?" Tears streamed down Vanessa's face. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. But please, Brandon, for the sake of what we once had, for our children, can't you find it in your heart to forgive me, to help me?" For a moment, Brandon felt his resolve waver. The woman before him was a shadow of the vibrant, ambitious person he had married. Part of him wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay. But then he remembered the videos, the lies, the betrayal. His expression hardened. "You dug your own grave, Vanessa," he said, his voice cold. "I'm sorry you're sick, and I hope you get the treatment you need. But I can't be the one to help you. Not anymore." Vanessa's face crumpled. "Brandon, please. I have nowhere else to go." "You should have thought about that before you decided to throw away everything we built together," Brandon replied. "I think it's time for you to leave." As he showed her to the door, Vanessa turned to him one last time. "What about the kids? Will you at least let me see them?" Brandon paused, conflict clear on his face. "We'll work out a visitation schedule through our lawyers. But for now, I think it's best if you stay away." With that, he closed the door, leaving Vanessa alone on the doorstep. As he leaned against the closed door, Brandon felt a mix of emotions wash over him: relief, sadness, and a lingering anger that he wasn't sure would ever fully fade. In the weeks that followed, the divorce was finalized. True to Neil's word, Brandon was awarded full custody of the children, the house, and most of their assets. Vanessa, her health deteriorating rapidly, was left with almost nothing. Brandon threw himself into rebuilding his life and caring for his children. He took a leave of absence from work, focusing on helping Lily and Max adjust to their new reality. It wasn't as there were tears, tantrums, and difficult questions, But slowly, day by day, they began to heal. One evening, as Brandon was tucking Lily into bed, she looked up at him with serious eyes. "Daddy, is Mommy ever coming home?" Brandon's heart clenched. He sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "No, sweetheart. Mommy made some choices that mean she can't live with us anymore. But she still loves you very much." Lily's lower lip trembled. "But why? Didn't she love us enough to stay?" Brandon struggled to find the right words. How do you explain adult betrayal to a child? Sometimes, Lily, grown-ups make mistakes. Big mistakes that hurt the people they love. It doesn't mean they don't love you. It just means they have to face the consequences of their actions. Lily nodded, though Brandon could see she didn't fully understand. "Will we ever see her again?" Brandon sighed. "Yes, you'll see her. We're working out a schedule now. But for now, I need you to be brave and patient. Can you do that for me?" Lily nodded solemnly. "I can be brave, Daddy. I promise." As Brandon turned out the light and closed Lily's door, he felt a wave of emotion wash over him. His children were the innocent victims in all of this. He vowed to do everything in his power to protect them and give them the stable, loving home they deserved. Months passed. Brandon settled into his new role as a single father, juggling work and childcare with the help of a nanny. The kids slowly adjusted to their new normal, though there were still difficult moments and questions about their mother. One afternoon, Brandon received a call from the hospital. Vanessa had been admitted, her condition critical. Despite everything that had happened, Brandon felt a pang of concern. He debated whether to go see her, unsure if he could face her after everything that had happened. In the end, it was Lily who made the decision for him. "Daddy," she said, her young face serious. "If Mommy is sick, shouldn't we go see her? That's what families do, right?" Brandon looked at his daughter, marveling at her capacity for forgiveness and love. "You're right, sweetheart. That is what families do." They arrived at the hospital to find Vanessa a shadow of her former self. She was pale and gaunt, her once vibrant hair limp and dull. When she saw Brandon and the kids, her eyes filled with tears. "You came," she whispered, her voice weak. Brandon nodded, his expression guarded. "The kids wanted to see you." As Lily and Max hugged their mother, chattering about school and their lives, Brandon watched from the corner of the room. He felt a complex mix of emotions: anger, pity, and a lingering sadness for what might have been. When the kids stepped out to get a snack from the vending machine, Vanessa turned to Brandon. "Thank you," she said softly, "for bringing them and for everything. I know I don't deserve your kindness." Brandon sighed, running a hand through his hair. "No, you don't, but they deserve to see their mother. And despite everything, I wouldn't want you to be alone right now." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Brandon, for everything. I know it's too late, but I need you to know that." Brandon nodded, his throat tight. "I know, and I hope you get better, Vanessa, for the kids' sake." As they left the hospital that day, Brandon felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He hadn't forgiven Vanessa, not completely, but he had found a way to move forward, to put his children's needs first. In the months that followed, Brandon focused on rebuilding his life. He threw himself into his work, earning a promotion that allowed him to provide an even better life for his children. He started dating again, cautiously at first, always putting Lily and Max's well-being first. Vanessa's health improved slightly with treatment, though the doctors warned her she would never fully recover. She had visitation with the kids, supervised at first, then gradually more relaxed as she proved she could be responsible. One evening, as Brandon sat on the back porch watching Lily and Max play in the yard, he reflected on the journey of the past year. The betrayal, the anger, the pain, it had all shaped him, changed him in ways he was still discovering. But as he watched his children laugh and play, Brandon felt a sense of peace wash over him. They had survived the storm. They were healing, growing stronger every day. And while the scars of Vanessa's betrayal would always be there, Brandon knew that he and his children would be okay. He had weathered the storm, protected his family, and come out stronger on the other side. And as the sun set on another day, Brandon Hargrove looked to the future with hope and determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, He was ready to face them for himself and for his children.